This is the land of hard work. The land of open spaces and diverse faces. This is a land where determination and loyalty are always on the job. This is a land of baseball. It is our game of inches that covers miles and spans generations. It is why we gather under spacious skies and celebrate with amber waves. So take us out to the ball game, cause it ain't over.
What I just saw!
Till it's over. This is our 9-inning pursuit of happiness.
History!
This is our passion, our promise, our heartache, and our hope. This is baseball. This is our game.
The Golden Gate Bridge is part of the scene, the ballpark by the bay, AT&T Park, where the Mets and the Giants open up a 3-game weekend series presented to you on MLB Network by Chevrolet. The Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays, honored in statue form outside the ballpark. Of course, he performed his exploits first at the Polo Grounds for the New York Giants, then in center field at Candlestick Park. But look, kids, we've got another Hall of Famer up in the booth, back at a baseball broadcast booth for the first time since the '95 World Series, Mr. Al Michaels.
No kid would remember me in a baseball booth. It's been that long. But this is going to be a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm glad you broached this subject a number of months ago. I thought you were crazy.
Well, I may be for other reasons.
Well, of course, but you said New York against San Francisco, so I figured it would be the Jets against the 49ers. We'd be talking about Rex Ryan and Jim Harbaugh tonight, but no.
You got to knock some of the rust off. You ready to go?
Tell me about it. Well, we'll find out.
Here's the format. First 3 innings, we're with you here on MLB Network, and Al and I will split the play-by-play, going back and forth, alternating the innings. Then in the 4th and 5th innings here on MLB Network, Gary Cohen and Ron Darling from SNY, the Mets announcers, an excellent pair. They'll slide into this booth. We'll do those 2 innings back to New York. We'll do 6 and 7 to the San Francisco area, and you'll be joined by Mike Krukow and Dwayne Kuiper, for those of you keeping score at home. And then we'll be back here for the 8th and the 9th and extra innings, if there are any. And I can tell you're hoping this goes about 20.
We have so many things to talk about and so many clips to roll in. Yeah, we have 16 years worth of stuff to talk about tonight. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, though, because there's a lot of history involved with the Giants, and of course more recent history with the Mets, who came into existence in 1962. And you know, both teams are playing pretty well right now. You know, the Mets are trying to get a wild card berth if they can possibly secure that, even though they're a long shot. And the Giants, despite missing Buster Posey, are still in first place in the National League West. So a good one tonight.
By a couple of games over the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, Al Michaels was, in addition to all the great ball games he called on ABC through the years, the radio voice for several years of the Cincinnati Reds, and later in the 70s here with the San Francisco Giants. But the big difference, Candlestick as opposed to AT&T.
If you're a Giant fan and you're middle-aged, I mean, this would have been like dying and going to heaven. There was Candlestick Park, and it looked pretty in that shot, but there it was, and that was probably in the middle of July. You know, it's the old saw about the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. It was an abysmal place, and the Giants called it home for 40 years. The 49ers still call it home. The weather in the football season's better. And then they come here. At a couple of points in time, it looked as if the Giants would be leaving San Francisco. Then they wind up with this, and tonight they have another sellout crowd. I say another. They've sold out all season, every game.
Every game. Drew more than 3 million a year ago. They'll pass that mark again this year. They will throw Ryan Vogelsong, who's one of the great stories of this baseball season, against the Mets knuckleballer R.A. Dickey. And we're back to talk about the pitching pairing, talk about these two teams, and take a short trip down memory lane with Al Michaels when this MLB Network special, presented by Chevrolet, continues from AT&T Park in San Francisco. Folks, let's take a trip down memory lane. Yes, that is Al Michaels in 1972 with the Hall of Famer Kurt Gowdy and with the inimitable Howard Cosell. From red to yellow to blue, Reggie and Palmer and eventually McCarver.
That is my rogues gallery, and yours, of course, includes people like Marv Albert,
There's Marveloso.
And Tony Kubek, who was a part of that 1972 broadcast team when I did the World Series. The great Bob Uecker and Joe Morgan.
97 World Series. And the Steven Strasburg game. More recently, last year with Cott and Smoltz in D.C.
The one guy we share in common, Bob Uecker, who we both think is the funniest man in history. Just one quick story. I'm doing a game about 1980 with Howard Cosell, who thought he knew everything about baseball, but he really knew nothing. And Bob Uecker and Howard wanted the Astros to bunt a situation where a bunt was absolutely not called for. And Uecker is mildly chiding him the way he did on the air. And Howard goes, Ueck, I get your point. You don't have to be so truculent. You do know what truculent means, don't you? And without hesitation, Uecker says, of course, Howard, if you had a truck and I borrowed it, it would be a truculent. And that was Bob Uecker and is Bob Uecker.
Sweeter still because he trumped Cosell.
Oh, absolutely.
With it. Now, I never worked with Howard, but you were there the night I met Howard for the first time. 83 World Series, Phils and Orioles at the old Memorial Stadium. And there he is wearing that hideous yellow jacket, got a cigar about as big as a Louisville Slugger, standing there in the doorway. I walk up to him, I say, Mr. Cosell, my name is Bob Costas. It's a pleasure to meet you. He says, I know who you are. You're the child who rhapsodizes about the infield fly rule. I'm sure you'll have a fine career. And he turned and walked back into the booth, and I was actually oddly flattered and amused that A, he knew who I was, and B, he gave me the full Cosell treatment.
Well, Howard was one of a kind, but he was a guy. Howard was a guy, if he showed up for a game, he thought this was the most important thing in the world. He thought it was far more important than the game that was being played. We would do, for instance, a Yankee game on Monday Night Baseball. It might be May 20th, and the Yankees would be trailing 4-0, and he would want Billy Martin to bring Goose Gossage
in the fourth
from the bullpen to put out the fire because Howard was there. He didn't want that game to get away from him.
You know, you were so pleased at age 26 to be working with the great Kurt Gowdy. You didn't even care about the red jacket, and you didn't really think twice about that shirt you were wearing.
All I knew was that in those years, if the team that you were announcing for won the pennant, which the Reds did dramatically against Pittsburgh in the championship series, you got to do the World Series. So I'm coming on the air, and as you can tell, I went to my hairstylist to get all the straightener put into my hair in that one particular shot. So there I am, and I know when Gowdy's leading to me on the World Series, and I'm 26 years old, the only thing I can think of is, please, God, please, when I open my mouth, let air come out.
And it did. We're going to step aside for just a second. It's R.A. Dickey for the Mets. It's Ryan Vogelsong for the Giants. The lineups on the first pitch from AT&T coming up. This MLB Network special is presented by Chevrolet and their award-winning cars, trucks, and crossovers, and sponsored in part by Firestone, the official tire of Major League Baseball, and by Dial for Men. Get your dirt on. We'll get it off. AT&T Park, as the cable cars, in this case, don't climb toward the stars, descending in that case. But is there a more beautiful vista in all of baseball? Pittsburgh, lovely. Camden Yards, the skyline in Baltimore, of course, the originals like Fenway and Wrigley are in their own category. But look at that. The bay glistening in the fading sunlight out beyond the barrier in center field. Wow, what a sight.
Poetry, I like that. You know, and there is the Bay Bridge. That is the famed cantilevered portion where a section of that collapsed during the 1989 World Series. And of course, they got it back together a couple of months later. They started the World Series again 10 days later. I think one of the great things about this park too, Bob, is that it's a different view. If you're sitting back of third, you look out toward the bay and you can see Oakland and the East Bay. And if you're sitting back of first, you can see the Bay Bridge. I mean, it's just a magnificent setting. And
it's also an asymmetrical and quirky ballpark, which makes games more interesting. 309 down the line in right, 339 to the foul pole in left, only 399 to straightaway center. But the deepest part of the ballpark is 421 in right center field, and all kinds of angles here. As you look at the right field fence, part of it is brick, obviously, but then there are those little archways where if a ball hits off there, it's hitting off metal and might bound away in a different fashion. You have to know how to play right field here. Very tricky.
Weren't you the guy who came up with the phrase? I thought it was a fabulous phrase. about 10 or 15 years ago, and they took all of the old soup tureens, the Cincinnatis and Pittsburghs and St. Louis's and Atlantas, and started redoing the ballparks in this mode, like Cleveland and Baltimore and Denver and San Francisco. Wasn't it you who said it's like putting a microwave in a Colonial?
Yeah, I said, look, you want a modern ballpark with modern amenities? They can put a microwave oven in a colonial-style house. Why not build a ballpark that feels like a ballpark and put all the modern amenities in it? Well, there's Bruce Bochy. Thinking about Bochy, age 56, and his counterpart tonight, Terry Collins, age 62, relative whippersnappers with guys like Jack McKeon and Davey Johnson coming back. These guys are wet behind the ears.
Jack McKeon at 80 years old. Bochy has been managing that for 17 consecutive seasons. He was in San Diego for 12 straight years, leaves there, and then we were talking to Larry Baer, the Giants president, the other night, and I said, who else did you have in mind when you hired Bruce? And he said, well, we also looked at Lou Piniella, but it looked like he would go to Chicago. And sure enough, we were talking to Bruce about, did you have any other options? And he thought Chicago was the option there. So Piniella winds up going one place. Bochy winds up going to the other place, to San Francisco, and of course he wins the World Series last year, and a franchise that's been here since 1958 and has had Mays and McCovey and Marichal and Cepeda and Bonds. Barry and Bobby wins its first World Championship on his watch last season as the Giants take the field.
And now to Terry Collins, who previously had managed the Astros and the Angels, but last managed in the major leagues in 1999 with the Angels, and was kind of a minor league coordinator in the Mets system when he got what he thought was just a courtesy interview with their new general manager, Sandy Alderson. He said 10 days later they called me back, told me I had the job. I was as surprised as anybody. His team was 8 games under 500 in April. Right now, they're 2 games over. Unfortunately for them, they're in the toughest division in the National League, the East, led by the Phillies, so they trail by 10 games. But what a job Collins has done in righting the ship here. There's some turmoil surrounding the team and its financial problems. And on the field, they're without David Wright and Ike Davis. As of today, they're officially without Jose Reyes on the 15-day disabled list with a pulled hamstring, retroactive to last weekend. They haven't had their ace, Johan Santana, all season and don't expect him back till mid-August at the earliest. And yet here they are, 2 games over 500.
And Collins shocking everybody, I think, when he got the job, because everybody said, Terry Collins, what? Managing for 6 years in the 90s, 3 years at Houston, then 3 years with the Angels, and then he coached in Tampa. He assumed some administrative duties with the Dodgers. He went to manage in Japan, and one of the odd things was he was managing in Japan for a couple of years. He leaves a team after the 08 season, and Ryan Vogelsong, who's another tremendous story on the mound tonight for San Francisco, winds up pitching for that same team. So 2 reclamation projects here tonight.
Here is Terry Collins' lineup. They were shut down last night at Dodger Stadium by Clayton Kershaw. Daniel Murphy, after a slow start, sizzling the last couple of months, taking his batting average to an even 300 coming into tonight's game. But without Jose Reyes at the top of the lineup, this is a much different team. They led the National League in runs scored in June when Reyes was on a tear, and then he went for his hamstring. Ryan Vogelsong, out of the major leagues since 2006. A number of minor league stops, a detour to Japan. Bruce Bochy told us before the game, look, we brought him to spring training as a courtesy. We thought we'd just send him out to Fresno. I thought he had 0 chance to make the team, let alone crack the rotation. Barry Zito gets hurt in April. They bring him up from Fresno. They stick him in the rotation. He's 6-1, ERA of 2.13, and an all-star. Ball 1 inside to Angel Pagan, the switch hitter, leading it off. 60 degrees at game time. Wind blowing out towards center field at about 12 miles an hour. And the wind, as ever, is a factor in this ballpark. A high pop wide of third. Pablo Sandoval has room.
You know, Vogelsong was a guy who actually signed with the Giants organization back in '98. He made his debut with the Giants in 2000, the same year the park opened up, but he pitched here just briefly, and in '01. Then he went to Pittsburgh, and he was a starting pitcher in their rotation in 2004. Then, as Bob said, out of the majors, over to Japan, gets a courtesy call to come to spring training, and on Tuesday night he will be in Phoenix, introduced as an all-star.
Ball 1 to Justin Turner. David Rackley is the plate umpire. Tim Welke, the crew chief, at first. Bill Miller at second. Jim Reynolds at third. Fouled away.
Turner moving around, and Bob talked about the fact that Ike Davis is hurt. David Wright is hurt. Now you got Reyes on the bench. So every night it's like a dice cup. Kerry Collins has to shake it up and see what spills out. And tonight it's Turner batting second at second base.
And Vogelsong's 1-1 pitch is taken low. Back on May 3rd, Vogelsong had one of his few poor outings of the season to this point. Gave up 5 runs in 4 innings to the Mets at Citi Field. Since then, he's gone 5-1 with an ERA of 1.67. The 2-1 to Turner. Bounced off Vogelsong's glove, but to Tejada. 1-4-3. Until Wednesday night against the Padres, Miguel Tejada had never played a game at second base, never even taken ground balls at second base. But they need him. They're depleted by injuries. Mike Fontenot just off the disabled list. Bill Hall on the disabled list as of today. So you got Tejada at second instead of short. The rookie Brandon Crawford is the shortstop. Sandoval and Huff at the corners, and Eli Whiteside is the catcher in place of Buster Posey, who of course is gone for the season. Rowan, Torres, and Shearholtz left to right. Carlos Beltran. He and Reyes were the Mets All-Stars. Reyes, of course, will not play because of his hamstring injury. 4 pitchers from the Giants made Bruce Bochy's squad. Tim Lincecum, the 2-time Cy Young Award winner. Matt Cain, this guy, Ryan Vogelsong, and their closer, Brian Wilson. No position players from the Giants made the All-Star team. There's Lincecum. He pitches tomorrow. And Wilson, who may pitch later tonight.
Well, it's too bad for Cain, because Cain was named to the All-Star team, but he will not be there because he's going to pitch on Sunday. And the way it works out in recent years is that if you're going to pitch on Sunday, there's no reason to have the guy go to Phoenix. So he's on the All-Star team, but he'll get a 3-day vacation. You know, Bob, every time Beltran is talked about, and he's having a good year, everybody wondering if he will be a Met in August. The trade deadline is July 31st, and there was a lot of speculation about maybe Reyes being dealt because he'll be a free agent. Doubtful. Frankie Rodriguez, who knows? And then there's Beltran, who a lot of people think will be moved.
And a called strike 3. So Vogelsong sets the Mets down in order in the top of the first. Giants coming up at AT&T Park.
Blimey, why does everything from America have to be so big?
Come on, baby. すげえアメリカンブリトー。
バケモン。
Mais c'est presque aussi gros que leur SUV. What are you supposed to do with it?
Slice it and maybe share it amongst the team.
Taco Bell's new XXL grilled stuffed burrito. We start with steak, then add 3 cheeses, then add seasoned rice and beans, then add fiesta salsa and top it off with even more of your favorites. It's not just XL, it's XXL. Think outside the bun.
People have been using wind power for sailboats since the beginning of time. Wind can be converted to electricity with windmills, and it's clean and renewable. There are people and companies working to make wind power available to everyone. All we have to do is get behind them. Can one solution to energy woes be blowing in the wind? The possibilities are endless.
I'm a paid non-attorney spokesperson. If you or a loved one has mesothelioma or any other asbestos-related cancer, call now. Asbestos manufacturers sold deadly asbestos materials to thousands of companies, putting workers at risk. Over $18 billion in court-ordered trusts have been set aside to pay out claims to asbestos victims. You may be entitled to a portion of these funds and receive compensation without filing a lawsuit or ever going to court.
Call 1-800-669-7892 now. That's 1-800-669-7892.
Giants coming up in the bottom of the first. Here's their lineup. In truth, they don't score much, but with their pitching, they usually don't have to. They're 50-39, exactly half of their victories by 1 run. They're 25-12 in 1-run decisions. That's the best record in the majors. Sandoval and Huff each have 8 home runs. That leads the team. Sometimes when a team lacks power, and that's accentuated with Buster Posey out for the season, they make up for it by stealing bases and moving runners. But this team really doesn't have all that much team speed either. What they do have is overwhelmingly good pitching.
Good pitching. It's fairly timely hitting. Last night is a case in point. The Giants are going to have to win a lot of games as they did last night. 2-1 was the final score. Excellent work by Barry Zito, who now has come back, and he is healthy, and he's given them a tremendous lift. But the Giants right now as a team hitting just .242.
R.A. Dickey's first pitch to Andres Torres. The 36-year-old knuckleballer is 4-7. He's often pitched better than that record would indicate. Suffered from a lack of run support. His ERA is under 4. 6'2" and 222 from Nashville, Tennessee. And a called strike. Torres is a switch hitter. Sometimes switch hitters will bat right-handed against the knuckleballer because with the knuckleball dancing, the lefty-righty advantage is negated. And Torres decides not to do that. Dickey losing his footing.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because he had to come out of his last start 5 days ago with a pulled glute muscle, and for a day or two they didn't know if he'd be able to make the start tonight. So obviously Collins is going to watch him closely.
That is the polite and technical way to refer to a pain in the butt.
Correctamente.
Torres, after a strong 2010, struggling this season.
See, I didn't know if you could say butt on the MLB network. It's my debut here.
What are they going to do? Fire you? You're here on a 1-game contract.
That could be. This is somewhat different, I got to tell you.
The 2-2. Fouled away. Torres played more than 1,000 minor league games. Battled and battled to get his shot. Then came up and seemed to make the most of it a year ago, but his performance has slid back this year. Another 2-2 pitch. Knuckleball line down the right field line, foul.
And you talked about his lengthy minor league service in the case of Torres. You touched on Dickey and the fact he's 36 years old. Dickey has pitched in almost 300 minor league games up and down through the years. Texas, Seattle, Minnesota, then came to the Mets last year at 11-9. Out of the University of Tennessee, where he was an English literature major and must have gone to school there with Peyton Manning. Manning would have been playing football at Knoxville just about the same time.
Line drive caught at shortstop by Ruben Tejada. Something's going on in Baltimore, and it isn't good. A fight has broken out. Let's check in with our studios.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. We got a Chevrolet update from Boston. Fight night at Fenway. You see Kevin Gregg and David Ortiz going at it. Ortiz charging the mound. Now Gregg throws a punch. Ortiz also does. Neither of them connect here. Ortiz was not happy with the words that Kevin Gregg said there. Ortiz got brushed back on the pitch before. So some fireworks at Fenway. The Red Sox won 10-3 in that one. Bob, we'll send it back to you.
Obviously, that altercation taking place at Fenway, with David Ortiz displeased. Several pitches close to him, and he went off.
Almost landed that roundhouse left. I assume he fights southpaw as well.
Gives new meaning to designated hitter.
Right.
Brandon Crawford, rookie shortstop. Described by Bochy as their best defensive infielder. Hasn't hit yet at .221 with a couple of home runs.
Well, it's an odd collection when you look at the Giants, and we talk about the fact they haven't been hitting. And you got your leadoff batter hitting .226. Crawford's at .221. Rowan in the lineup, .242. Tejada, .240. Whiteside at 225. And yet an odd collection of Giants won the World Series title last year. Will it happen again as Crawford goes down?
So he takes a called third strike, and that'll bring up Sandoval, looking to extend what is now an 18-game hitting streak. Last year, Bruce Bochy's team won it all, and they called it torture. 9 innings of torture. They've amended it just slightly this year as they're in first place again. Now they're calling it torment. They only won the division by a game, barely eked past the Padres last weekend of the season. But once they got into October with that pitching, they were able to win it all. On the comebacker, Dickey takes care of Sandoval and works a perfect first. No score after 1 in San Francisco.
Until that stadium was torn down, I could still hear the echoes of that sound of the crowd. And, you know, it was the last game that Clemente ever played. And the follow-up was that Johnny Bench, who hits almost every home run to left field, hits one to right, the game's tied.
Boy, that home run sure meant a lot to your career, didn't it?
Boy, in those years, and we mentioned it in the pregame portion of the telecast tonight, if you were the lead announcer for a team and your team got to the World Series, you got to do the World Series on national television in your home park and on national radio when you were on the road, and the Reds that year took on Oakland. But that only tied the game, and then it took a couple of singles. It took the pinch runner George Foster to get to third with 2 out, and then of all things, Bob Moose threw a wild pitch. Manny Sanguillen tried to ole it and went to the backstop, and the Reds won the pennant.
You went to the World Series with them.
Unbelievable.
Against the Oakland A's. With Al Michaels, Bob Costas at AT&T Park. Top of the second, Murphy, Bay, and Duda, the hitters for the Mets. Ryan Vogelsong on the hill for the Giants prior to this season was 10-22 in the big leagues with an ERA of nearly 6. He stands there now at 6-1, ERA barely over 2.
And we talked about the circuitous path he's taken, signed by the Giants organization to Pittsburgh and bouncing around to the minors into Japan. Among other things, back in 03, he had Tommy John surgery.
Released last year by both the Phillies and the Angels. You would have guessed there was a better chance that his career would be over than that he would be in the All-Star game. His 2-1 to Murphy. Hit on the ground to second. Tejada throws him out.
Well, we talked about our conversation with Bruce Bochy before the game, and I said, what chance did Vogelsong have of making the team in spring training? And he said 0. Well, 0 is an all-star.
I asked Bruce what his approach to the game would be on Tuesday night. He said, look, we're going to try to get players in, but I'm going to tell some guys up front, you may not play tonight. We're more concerned with winning the game than showcasing every single player. Those numbers are relatively modest for Jason Bay, but the 6 homers already matches last year's total.
Hit 2 home runs in the game at Dodger Stadium earlier in the week.
Top 30 home runs and 100 RBIs 4 times in his career. But a combination of the shift from Fenway Park to Citi Field and injuries limited him to just 6 home runs a year ago.
And collided with the wall at Dodger Stadium about 2/3 of the way through last season, and that took care of his final 2 months.
Vogelsong falls behind him 3-0. So you see what he did in 09, and that was a contract year and led to the big deal he got from the Mets. So he picked a great time to go 36-119 at Fenway in the middle of that formidable Red Sox lineup. Different story with the Mets at spacious Citi Field. Called strike. full count. Count holds full to Jason Bay.
Bay getting a nice deal, of course, after those years in Boston, and the Mets are on the hook for a lot of money. In fact, their payroll this year $142 million, and the Giants at $118 as the world champions, and that came up from last year when they were, I think, a little bit under 100.
Breaking ball dips low, and Bay becomes the game's first base runner, drawing a one-out walk. Bay has stolen 8 bases, so the Giants have to be aware of him. Lucas Duda, big minor league numbers at Buffalo, hasn't come close to that so far in the big leagues. Ike Davis with the injured ankle, their regular first baseman, out. David Wright still hasn't returned from the disabled list, former all-star third baseman with the bad back. Jose Reyes, one of the league's most electric players, on the DL, so their starting shortstop is out. Their entire infield is scrambled. This one's hit solidly to center, but there to take it is Andres Torres. As the Mets face Vogelsong tonight, consider this stretch. They lost to Clayton Kershaw last night. They get Vogelsong tonight, Lincecum and Kane to finish the series, all of them all-stars. Then after the break, they play the Phillies, and they likely face, in order, Halladay, Lee, and Hamels. Good luck.
Yeah, right. With Reyes on the DL, Davis still not available, Wright still not available.
And their own ace, Johan Santana, on the shelf.
And there it is, the likely fivesome they will face, in addition to an all-star tonight in Vogelsong and an all-star last night who beat them in Los Angeles in Kershaw. You know, Bob, you sit here and you think of these two teams, and the Giants, naturally, their roots were in New York, and when they came west for the '58 season, along with O'Malley bringing Peter's father Walter to Los Angeles, if that doesn't happen, there are no Mets, because the Mets get their franchise, the expansion franchise, because they wanted to fill the National League void in New York. And these two teams also, they share something else in common, and that is they both played in the Polo Grounds.
Yep.
The Giants for a ton of years, and the Mets when they were granted their franchise for the first couple of years when Shea Stadium was under construction.
Yep. Mets played in the Polo Grounds in '62 and '63. The 1-1 pitch to Josh Thole coming up. Taken high and away.
When you think of the Polo Grounds, I mean, if there's one image, I guess there are two images, really. I mean, Bobby Thompson's home run is one. The shot heard around the world to win the '51 playoffs against the Dodgers. The other is Willie Mays going all the way back and some 465 feet from the plate, making the phenomenal catch in the '54 World Series against Vic Wertz. And Willie's in the ballpark tonight,
as he is most nights when the Giants play at home. That one's popped down the left field line. Rowan for a look, but no play. You know, as a kid growing up in New York, and you were a Brooklyn boy before heading out to the West Coast, talking about those early Mets, every telecast and every radio broadcast began with the little ditty, "Meet the Mets."
Right.
And the woman who composed that song, a Juilliard graduate, as it turns out, Ruth Roberts, in her 80s, passed away about a week ago.
Really? Did not know that.
In her own way, an important part of the history of the Mets. As Bay dives back. Come on, meet the Mets.
I remember it, of course.
Step right up and meet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed you'll have the time of your life.
Half the audience just hit mute.
Bay away from first, held by Huff. And a full count now to Josh Thole. Well,
meet the Mets, step right up and
Chris Pfeiffer can do it all, our producer.
Because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall, which wasn't really true in the early days of futility for that franchise.
Not those amazing.
Bay goes, Tolley takes, and the second walk of the inning.
Of course, the Giants theme song for years was Bye Bye Baby, which was a takeoff on the way Russ Hodges, their longtime announcer and the man who called the Bobby Thompson home run. That's how he would call a shot that left the park. Bye Bye Baby.
So here is 21-year-old Ruben Tejada hitting 8th in the Met lineup. He's knocked home 18 in an RBI spot here. 2 on, 2 out. The pitcher R.A. Dickey on deck. Off-speed breaking ball drops in for a strike.
Mets with some timely hitting, and that's in good measure why they're playing as well as they are. Took a long time for the Mets to get over 500, but they're a couple of games above the mark right now.
A ball and a strike to Tejada, who will see considerable time now at shortstop, at least for the next couple of weeks, in the absence of Reyes. Whiteside the sign. Vogelsong checks the runners, and his 1-1 pitch is down and away at the time that he had to be disabled. Reyes was leading the league by a large margin in hitting, by a huge margin in triples. He led the league in runs scored and total hits, and he was second in stolen bases. Think Terry Collins misses him?
Well, therein lies the rub, why he's even being talked about as a guy that they would deal. Do you want to give a long-term contract to a guy who relies on his legs and is prone to hamstring pulls?
And in fact, he missed the entire second half of the 09 season with a hamstring injury. He's 28, so he should be entering the prime of his career, and he's not just a terrific player, he's a fabulously exciting player.
Right.
Chopper to short. Crawford's got it, goes to Tejada for the force, and the Mets strand 2. When we come back, the play-by-play duties shift to Al Michaels. Bottom of the second coming up in San Francisco. No score.
Sounds like a threat.
Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go?
I cheer on the Giants and hope they will win, but really, I'm just out there having fun. This is baseball. This is our game.
And there is the adorable Kira Lapidus, the 9-year-old who read our opening tonight. Too young to remember the last time Al Michaels did play-by-play of a ball game. For that matter, too young to remember the Clinton administration.
Correct.
Too young to remember a lot of stuff. Have at it, Al.
Barely old enough to remember the Bush 43 administration. Aubrey Huff is the batter. Middle of the order, Huff, Shearholds, and Rowan. And the knuckleballer Dickey starts Huff with a strike. Huff, another of that collection of guys last year that the Giants, with general manager Brian Sabian, putting together to win a world title. He'd been in the American League for a lot of years, several with Tampa Bay. Then he went to Houston. Then he went back to the American League to Baltimore. Giants got him last year, and he hit .290. This season, 8 home runs, but 3 of them in one game. A little squibber that Dickey will handle, and he's retired the first 4, 1 gone.
In fact, that one game was about a month ago in St. Louis. We broadcast the game. Tom Verducci was with me. He hit 3 home runs that night. I saw him on the field before the game tonight. He said, I haven't hit one since the last time I saw you. So I'm hoping you're a good luck charm. Well, not on his first at-bat.
No, a little squibber to the mound. 4 straight set down by the Mets starter. And here is probably the hottest Giant, Nate Shearholds. Shearholds has taken over now in right field, batting in the 5 spot. So he's been coming up in the order. He hit 2 home runs, including 1 in the 14th inning. 2 nights ago to beat San Diego. And he fouls it away, and the count is 0-1. The game-winning home run coming at about 11 o'clock on Wednesday night to right field and bounced off either somebody's hands or the back of the Levi's landing area and out into the drink. 1-1 the count. Not too early to point out that Dickey is pitching a no-hitter. I say that because the Mets have played almost 8,000 games as Schierholtz lifts one down the left field line. And the only reason I showed up tonight, Bob, is I want to be here when the Mets finally have their first ever no-hitter. A franchise that started in 1962, no-hitters, 0.
Tom Seaver came close for them a couple of times, eventually threw one as a member of the Cincinnati Reds. The Mets have never had a batting titleist and have never had one of their pitchers throw a no-hitter.
And they've had 35 one-hitters. And the Padres, who've been around a long time, since 1969, the only other team with no no-hitters.
Generally, Dickey throws a harder knuckleball than most, but that was a true floater he just sent up there to Schierholtz.
Hoyt Wilhelmish. And down he goes. Foul tips it into the glove of Tolley, so that's 2 strikeouts for Dickey. Robert Allen Dickey, R.A. Dickey. And it brings up Aaron Rowan.
On the other hand, Al, you called a couple of no-hitters when you were the voice of the Giants, right?
In 3 years here, and the teams weren't very good. Ed Halicki pitched one in '75 against the Mets in the second game of a doubleheader. And then the Count, the most colorful figure who was here in the '70s during the tenure when I was the announcer for the Giants. The Count threw one against Atlanta at the end of the 1976 season.
John Montefusco.
He was a breath of fresh air in a franchise that was moribund, and that is not over describing it as he fouls one off his foot. Speaking of the Count, John Montefusco, there it was in Atlanta. There were about 3,000 people there that night, a completely meaningless end of the season game. And the Count had a fever before the game. I saw him in the clubhouse. As I was walking up to the booth, he felt awful, and that's the way the night ended. And there's a little fly ball to shallow center field, and that is caught by Pagan on the run. So 2 perfect innings for R.A. Dickey. And at the end of 2 in San Francisco, it's the Mets nothing and the Giants nothing. For the first time in 27 years, a World Series game will be played in Candlestick Park. The Battle of the Bay continues. Game 3 of the 1989 World Series, the Oakland Athletics against the San Francisco Giants. I'm Al Michaels. Welcome to Game 3. I'll tell you what, we're having an earth.
I don't know if we're on the air or not, and I'm not sure I care at the moment, but we are.
And there was the section of the Bay Bridge, the one section that collapsed. And of course, that was pretty much along with the collapsing freeway in the East Bay and the fire in the marina, the everlasting images of that fateful early evening on October 17th, 1989.
And you did such a masterful job shifting from play-by-play man to, in effect, news reporter. And your work that night, mostly with Peter Jennings, some of it with Ted Koppel, earned you an Emmy nomination in the news category. The only other time that's ever happened, the late, great Jim McKay and his matchless work in 1972 during the hostage crisis and tragedy at the Munich Olympics.
Right. It was not that many years ago, but the communication systems and how we would cover it right now are vastly different than it was then, as Dickey, who's 2 for 26 as a batter this season, takes a strike. But the World Series, that happened on a Tuesday, and there was a little bit of a hue and cry, especially among the Eastern media, as it's chopped to the left side and backhanded in the hole by Crawford, who throws him out. Dickey is gone, 1 down, and Pagan is the batter. I think a lot of the Eastern media just wanted to go home, and Fay Vincent was the commissioner, and he said, hold on a second. See, I thought it was very important to the people in this area to have the World Series resume, because it was almost like you're a fighter. You get knocked down, you take an 8 count, and you want to get up. And around here, they wanted to show the resiliency that they were going to come back, and they did. And they started the World Series again a week from the following Friday.
And then the A's completed the sweep, having won the first 2 games in Oakland. Took 3 and 4 when they finally resumed at Candlestick.
Here's Pagan. And the general manager of the A's at that time was Sandy Alderson, who then, of course, went eventually to the commissioner's office and is now the GM of the New York Mets. 1-1 the count on Pagan. Pagan fouled out in the first inning. Neither team with a hit. The Mets were the only base runners in the game. Walks to Bay and Tolley in the second inning. With Pagan at the plate, you've got Sandoval playing in on the grass about 70 feet from the plate at third. And Vogelsong backs him off. 2-1 the count. The man they call the Panda. Sandoval with Pagan. Hitting .258. Ball 3, so says David Rackley, the plate umpire. 3-1 with 1 out. And Turner on deck in the third inning.
See, Al, it's just like riding a bike.
With training wheels. Lifted to left center field. And it's Rowan making the play. 2 down. Yeah, it's just like riding a bike until I say it's 3rd down and 5. Which I may not have a chance to say for a while, the way things are going.
Yeah, I just wanted to get you some work, just in case
Thank
the
you.
lockout carries, you know, to Thanksgiving.
You never know.
We got to keep you sharp.
I will make that drive to Dodger Stadium from time to time. Come on out, big boy. We'll do some fill-in work.
You know, that's the thing I've always known, and those who know you well, even though you're associated with the Miracle on Ice and all those great football calls through the years, you love your baseball and always have.
Well, you and I grew up in similar fashion, just loving it. And as a kid, when you grew up and you can walk to Ebbets Field, which was my lineage, my background, I mean, how can you not be a baseball fan? Grounded to third and scooped up by Sandoval. And down go the Mets in the third inning. 1, 2, 3. 2.5 quick innings in the books. Mets nothing, Giants nothing.
Cowhide dries out. So does your man hide. Regular men's body wash can dry out your skin. Dove Men Plus Care is different. Only Dove has micro moisture to fight skin dryness. So that man hide of yours stays clean and moisturized no matter what you put it through. Dove Men Plus Care. Be comfortable in your own skin. Introducing new Dove Men Plus Care Sensitive Clean Body Wash.
What do you think? We'd have to get all new appliances.
We'll just go to the warehouse stores. Pick out everything you want. Sink's ringing. Hello?
You think those guys have everything you want? Consider this your wake-up call. Only Sears has Kenmore in all 10 of the top 10 brands. The other guys don't even carry all top 3. I hope you brought an umbrella, because it's raining cold, hard facts up in here.
Thinking about buying appliances somewhere else? Think again. Sears.
Phone retract.
In right field, Tarasco going back to the track, to the wall. And what happens here? He contends that a fan reaches up and touches it. He's right. He's right.
When Jeter made contact with the ball and lofted it our way, I instinctively, as any ball player would, ran towards the ball and don't remember much else aside from that. And then pretty much the next thing I remember was being on the shoulders of an individual who I certainly couldn't pick out of a crowd today, and the whole stadium erupting and cheering on the play.
Jeffrey Mayer, 12 years old in 1996, actually went on to play collegiate baseball at Wesleyan, I believe, and with Derek Jeter closing in on 3,000 hits, the pursuit delayed a little bit by a rainout tonight in New York. There was a moment from his first season with the Yankees. He came up briefly in '95, but '96 was his official rookie season and helped them win the World Series.
He said he didn't know whose shoulders he was riding. I looked at that shot again. It looked like Keith Hernandez, didn't it? Miguel Tejada, a one-time American League MVP, takes outside. Tejada, Whiteside, and Vogelsong coming up for the Giants. Tejada, an illustrious career, and now winding down in his baseball dotage with the Giants.
Yeah, age 37.
Yep.
Had 150 RBIs in '04 for the A's. Of course, his career is tainted somewhat by his association with steroids, but he was one of the game's best for a long time and a very durable player. Had a 5 or 6 year stretch where he played every game of every season.
5th longest consecutive game streak in baseball history. Of course, number 1 would be Ripken, and that's grounded down to the second baseman, and Turner throws him out. 1 away. So Tejada gone, and Whiteside coming to the plate.
And now, for those of you just joining us, try to get over the shock. Yes, this is the great Al Michaels back in a baseball broadcasting booth for the first time since 1995. And the format tonight calls for us to do a couple of innings to the New York audience and a couple to the San Francisco audience. So beginning with the 4th, you're going to be joined here on MLB Network by the team of Gary Cohen and Ron Darling, who are the Mets announcers on SNY.
You and I always seem to get in these gerrymandered positions.
It's true.
Pitches a strike here with Whiteside at the plate. There was something called the Baseball Network in the mid-'90s. So Bob's working for NBC and I'm working for ABC. And we wound up splitting the World Series. And that's through the legs of Dickey, who pounds his glove in frustration and into center field for the game's first hit.
And there goes your hopes for a Met no-hitter.
There it goes. Well, maybe they'll give Dickey an error. So there's Whiteside, who's part of the Giants catching platoon now that Posey is done for the season. Whiteside hit a home run last night in their 2-1 win against San Diego. Now Vogelsong,
not a bad hitter.
Not a bad hitter, but still Murphy has to come in at third, expecting the bunt, and Vogelsong squares around and lays one down foul. 0-1.
Vogelsong checking with Tim Flannery, who is the third base coach. The runner Whiteside at first. Vogelsong has 3 successful sacrifices this year.
And now he pulls it back and chops one over the head of Murphy and into left field. And that will send Whiteside to third. You know, you could almost see that coming. Here comes Murphy in from third, creeping to like 60 feet. And Vogelsong squares, and in a situation like that, why lay one down when the guy is 60 feet away? Pull it back as he did, chops it over his head for a base hit.
And Whiteside manages to make it all the way to third. This is the sort of thing that Bruce Bochy's Giants have to do. They don't have all that much power. They can usually win a game if the offense can somehow give the pitching staff 3 or 4 runs. Sometimes they can make do with less, like last night when they won 2-1. But you've got to figure out ways to manufacture runs.
And they'll try to manufacture runs here, going back to the top of the order on Andres Torres as the 8 and 9 hitters get aboard. And the first pitch misses, ball 1. Torres lined to short to open the bottom of the first inning. And that's scooped out to save a wild pitch and a run by Tolle. 2-0 the count.
Tolle almost always catches Dickey. And in a situation like this, a knuckleballer, you have to take into account the accentuated possibility of the wild pitch.
Two and one. Mets, like the Giants, with a platoon situation behind the plate. Ronnie Paulino is the other Mets catcher. And the 2-1 pitch is lifted down the right field line, but foul and back out of play. So it'll be 2-2 with runners at first and third and 1 out in the bottom of the third inning. Brandon Crawford on deck for the Giants. Final series before the All-Star break. Tuesday night in Phoenix, the All-Star game. And then the Mets will resume play against the Phillies. Got him. So he goes 2-0 and then comes back to get him on a fastball. Torres strikes out. That's 3 strikeouts for Dickey. So the knuckleballer is able to get him here for the second out. That'll bring up Crawford. It's funny, it looked like a fastball when you're watching it live, and then you realize he throws that knuckler so hard because there's no spin on it, as you saw in the replay.
He has thrown them in this game as slow as 58 and as hard as 78.
A 78-mile-an-hour knuckleball is like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. The equivalent. 0-1 to count here on Crawford.
Dickey said something very interesting about the knuckler. He said Phil Niekro told him, look, if it bounces in the dirt, you throw it 58 feet. If you throw a perfect one, if you throw one behind the hitter, act like you meant to do it, because the knuckleball is so crazy, the hitter isn't sure himself.
Well, I thought Bob Uecker had the best explanation of how to catch a knuckleball. He says, wait till it stops rolling at the backstop and then go pick it up.
And every now and then Uecker had to try and contend with Niekro's knuckleball with the Braves.
And that's grounded to the left side, and an unassisted play for the shortstop Tejada. So the Giants were the first threat of the game, but they leave 2 and will go to the 4th inning.
Time now for the announcer shuffle, but first let's see where our Sprint Altogether Now reporter visited this week.
Ahoy fans and welcome. I'm Nick Stevens, and this is our Sprint Altogether fan in San Francisco, Kira Lapides. And today I'm going kayaking for baseballs in McCovey Cove. Any words of wisdom?
Good luck.
I'll probably need it. All right, folks. I'll see you with a souvenir. Or not. Oh, I'm already wet. That's a boat. All right. Gonna go ahead and just, I can't imagine a better seat in any house. I've never enjoyed watching a game more when I can't see the game. This is beautiful. I think it's the best seat in the house. How exciting is it when you finally catch a ball?
It's the most exciting thing since I had my son.
Fans are going wild. Moment of truth. The excitement. Here it comes. Yes, 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 yes. No, so close. Yes. Go, baseball, bunkers. I'm Nick Stevens, the Sprint Altogether Now reporter. Next week it's the All-Star break, but after that we're off to Tampa. In the meantime, for more of these videos, go to MLB.com/SprintFans.
Giants threatened in the bottom of the third, did not score, remain scoreless as we head for the 4th at AT&T Park, and the great announcer shuffle is underway. Gary and Ron off to the MLB Network booth, and Al Michaels and I slide in on the SNY side. And one thing for sure, they keep a very tidy booth.
This is
the whole
incredible.
counter was perfectly clean.
I left them a complete mess. I needed beacons to come in and move us over here for the 2 innings, and these guys are immaculate. Well, that's Darling. Ron Darling was always very clean.
Yeah, very meticulous, as a Yale man should be.
Right, and a Hawaii native.
Part of the order for the Mets in the top of the 4th. We'll be with you for the next couple of innings. Then your regular voices will rejoin you. Beltran, Murphy, and Bay. Carlos took a called 3rd strike in the 1st. And ball 1 high.
And I'm sure the guys filled you in on the Vogelsong saga. The guy who signs with the Giants over a decade ago, bounces around, goes to Japan, has Tommy John surgery along the way, has no chance to make the team in spring training, and now he's going to the All-Star game on Tuesday night.
And you look at Beltran at the plate, had surgery on his own on his bad right knee in January of 2010. Missed the whole first half of the season. The Mets objected, reserved the right to void his contract, slices this one down the left field line and deep toward the corner, and that ball is off the wall. Beltran on his way to second. It nearly got out as Rowan gets it back in.
Rowan has moved around in the outfield, plays a lot of center field, and this time Burrow was playing left last night, but they want to have Rowan in the lineup with Torres in center, and he goes back and appears to have a play on the ball before it bounces off the padding, and Beltran has the Mets' first hit of the game.
Yeah, upon a second look, he actually misplayed it, and the ball short hopped the wall for a leadoff double for Beltran. So that brings up Daniel Murphy. Red hot of late. Grounded to second his first time up. Drops down a bunt. It'll advance the runner as Vogelsong throws him out. So your cleanup man sacrifices in the fourth inning.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the Giants, of course, play a lot of very close, low-scoring one-run games. The Mets do as well. But you're right. You've got the number 4 hitter. You've got a left-handed batter, a left-handed cleanup hitter against a right-handed pitcher, and he lays one down to bring up Bay with a man at third, and the Giants will play the infield in.
Just to finish up on the Beltran story, now the Mets reserved the right to actually void the contract when he went and had surgery on his own. It turned out much better than anyone might have expected. And now he's back to all-star form. At first they thought, well, maybe if this is successful, he plays 3-4 days a week, never a day game after a night game. He's played virtually every game this year for the Mets.
If the Mets could void a contract, do you think they'd start with Oliver Perez?
I believe that would be your starting point.
Oliver tonight watching on a satellite dish, cruising around on some yacht in the Greek islands,
which he can well afford. Bay walked his first time up. Came in hitting .248 with 6 home runs. The Giant infield is in. With Beltran at third and 1 out. Lucas Duda on deck. Vogelsong from the stretch. Misses way high. One and 2 the count. Giants had their pitcher fake a bunt and chop one to left field for a hit. Mets had their cleanup man sacrifice. Giants pull the infield in a scoreless game in the fourth. Tells you what the managers think this game is likely to be.
You know, one thing I've noticed here, and not having done a baseball game for 16 years after doing a ton of them for over 20 years, they used to play the infield. When the infield was in, it was conventionally in. You played at the edge of the grass. And then through the years, you've gone back to almost what would be considered halfway. It's in right now. They'll try to cut down the run at the plate if they can, but it's not the way in used to be.
Here comes the 2-2 to Jason Bay. Just misses, full count. And the pro-Giant crowd, in effect, asking David Rackley what was wrong with that one. And I might ask the same question.
Ditto.
Of course, the letter high strike isn't always granted anymore. The rule book strike barely exists. So the 3-2 pitch. Walked it. Second walk for Bay. Runners at the corners for Lucas Duda.
And now you can play the infield, the conventional halfway, to try to induce a double play.
Bochy muttering about the pitch that Vogelsong didn't get on 2-2.
Dude out of the University of Southern California. So when you think of the history of the Mets, who's the #1 Trojan that comes to mind?
Tom Seaver.
Absolutely. Among the others, Dave Kingman, who played for both of these franchises. When I did the Giants in the mid-70s, Charlie Fox was the manager, and I come over here and they're going to make Kingman a third baseman. And that experiment lasted about 2 weeks because nobody wanted to sit behind first base when Kingman was playing third.
And I forget which scribe penned this line, otherwise I'd give full credit. But speaking of Kingman, who was a huge threat at the plate and somewhat comical in the outfield. He said he plays left field the way you'd imagine Steve Martin would play Hamlet. Down and in, 2-0. Vogelsong has walked 3 tonight. He's been stingy when the opposition has threatened, as you see.
Best in the majors. A little wilder than he's normally been tonight. Already 3 walks.
And now falls behind 3-0. With both these teams showing themselves willing to play small ball tonight, it's worth noting that American League teams are averaging their fewest runs per game since 1973, and the National League is averaging its lowest run rate since 1982. In there for a strike. So the crackdown on performance-enhancing drugs, the emergence of strong pitching throughout baseball, a different overhaul emphasis and kind of a different culture within the game. In the space of less than a decade, it's gone from bludgeon ball to something that more closely resembles the game of the 60s and early 70s.
And in this ballpark, the teams have scored a combined 6 runs per game as the bases are now loaded. And how odd is that, Bob? You have to go back to 1981 when the Astros in all of their home games had 5.3 runs per game scored in the Astrodome, and this would be the lowest since 1981. 6 runs per game. It's almost like the National Hockey League in here.
Well, the combination of the fact that the Giant lineup is not overpowering, this is generally a pitcher's park, and the Giants themselves have a great pitching staff. Not difficult to figure out why that's the case. The bases now loaded on the Beltran double, and walks to Bay and Duda. And a chance for Josh Tolley. Giant infield looks for the double play. And Tolley takes a ball.
And Vogelsong, who's been very efficient in most of his starts, especially recently, has thrown a lot of pitches tonight.
Potential double play ball. Tejada to Crawford. They turn it, and Vogelsong wriggles out of yet another jam. Still no score as we head for the bottom of the 4th in San Francisco.
A drive to right. Back to Georgia. Gone. A grand slam. What a scene at Shea. Have you ever seen anything like this?
And now that truly was an unforgettable night at Shea Stadium. Game 5 of the '99 NLCS. The Braves had a 3-0 lead. The Mets staved off elimination in Game 4, then won this 15-inning game through the rain and all kinds of twists and turns, as Sandoval lifts one to deep left. Going back is Bay on the track, and it hits over his head and against the wall. Sandoval around second, and then dives back in there with a leadoff double. It hit right off the banner, proclaiming them as the 2010 World Champions.
So 2 similar plays to start each half inning, because it looked like the double by Beltran was catchable by Rowan, and this one, Bay reaching for the wall, and the ball caroms off the wall before his hand gets to the padding. And a leadoff double for the man they call the Panda here.
And it extends his hitting streak to 19 games.
Now I'll bet you their cleanup hitter, the Giants, will not bunt here.
Well, a ground ball to the right side would accomplish the same thing.
As Murphy did for the Mets, the cleanup hitter bunting with a man at second and nobody out.
Dickey to Huff, missing outside. Thinking back to that Robin Ventura grand slam single, because he never rounded the bases, so officially didn't get credit for the home run. As Huff does just what we talked about, Bounces one to second. Turner throws him out, and moving to third with one out is Sandoval. But like every great baseball game, it isn't just the ending. It's how you got there. So many strategic moves, some that worked, some that backfired. And unlike other sports, where in a big moment you're always going to look to your biggest star, that's not the nature of baseball. It often comes down to the likes of Kevin McGlinchey on the mound for the Braves against Sean Dunston toward the tail end of his career as a pinch hitter, and an epic at bat. He comes through with a leadoff hit, and the Mets eventually rally and win the game.
And you're right that it's the one sport. I mean, in football you come in and out, in basketball you do as well, in hockey. But in baseball, at the end of a game like that, 5:46 and 15 innings, you're liable to have the number 9 guy on your staff on the mound.
This is going to get the first run home. Pagan in center makes the catch. Sandoval tags and scores. Sac fly for Shearholtz.
Well, Shearholtz has become about as popular a Giant as anybody over the past couple of weeks. He's been hot. Hit 2 home runs in the game against the Padres, including a game winner in the 14th inning the other night, and keeps moving up in the lineup to the point where some of the reporters around the Giants were asking Bruce Bochy if this guy shouldn't bat cleanup. He's liable to within the next couple of weeks.
So now Aaron Rowan taking a strike. The Mets had the bases loaded with 1 out in the top half of the inning and couldn't capitalize. A leadoff double by Sandoval and eventually a sac fly from Shearholtz give the Giants the lead in the bottom half. Grounded to third, Murphy. Across the diamond, pulls Duda off the bag, and Rowan is safe.
Trying to make a swipe tag, and in going by, Rowan able to dislodge the ball, and actually it didn't even take any contact. The ball was dropping out of Duda's glove even before Rowan got there. And that should be an assist to the third baseman and an error on the first baseman.
But it's scored E5. At least that's the initial indication.
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, it's clearly a play where you got to take the first baseman. He's going to come off the bag, but the throw is there in time to get him, and it's simply a case of Duda dropping it. Well, what do we know?
The ruling, though, is an error on Murphy. But you're right. Duda could have handled it. Did not. Not a perfect throw, but Duda could have saved him the error. So here's Miguel Tejada. Grounded to second, his first time up. Dickey misses off the outside corner. R.A. Dickey, with a record of 4-7 coming in, has often been on the short end of some close decisions in which he's pitched reasonably well. That scenario could be developing tonight as Tejada lines one to left center, and that falls in for a hit. On his way to third is Rowan. And Eli Whiteside will have a chance to add to the San Francisco lead.
Whiteside, part of the Giants catching platoon, much as the Mets have Polino and Tolle. The Giants, ever since the loss of Posey for the season a month and a half ago, basically go with whoever's pitching. That will determine the catcher. Whiteside was with Vogelsong. The other catcher is Stewart. Neither guy really hits very much. In Bruce Bochy's mind, is a case of which pitcher matches up best with which catcher.
Whiteside chops one foul. Of course, with Posey, not only did you have an excellent young receiver and one of the bright young stars in the game, appealing in every way, but he was their cleanup hitter much of the time. Hit .305 in the course of winning the Rookie of the Year award a season ago, and was hitting .284 at the time of the devastating injury after the collision at home plate with the Marlins' Scott Cousins.
And now, for the most part, Huff is the cleanup batter, and he's hitting .241. Though, as we say, the way Shearholtz is going, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the 4 spot after the All-Star break.
A run already home for the Giants in the bottom of the 4th. Rowan at third and Tejada at first with 2 out. And Whiteside pops one back and out of play.
What a treat this ballpark is. And of course, for 40 years, the Giants played in probably the worst stadium ever built. If it's not the worst, it's on your exacta ticket.
What a shame that Mays, McCovey, Marichal, Cepeda had to play most of their days in that place.
How about the fans who had to endure Candlestick Park?
Of course, yeah, they were paying for it rather than being paid to play.
Right. And then the Giants are able to come here. Ballpark built with private funds, and it opened in 2000. And he went that away.
And the 1-2 pitch way outside, and Tolley saves Dickey the wild pitch.
And Tejada takes second.
So Tejada gets credit for his 4th stolen base. As well as Vogelsong has generally pitched, and as strong as the Giant bullpen is even before they get to Brian Wilson, a base hit here could make life very difficult for the Mets. The 2-2 to Whiteside. Hit in the air to right. Almost in his tracks, Beltran. Now he comes in, the wind playing with it a little bit, but he takes it. So the Giants score 1 and leave 2 and lead 1-0 after 4.
At the plate, Hernandez playing back of the runner at first, and that's ripped to right field and deep. Strawberry goes back, she's gone. Mike Scioscia with 35 home runs in 8.5 years in the major leagues.
Al Michaels with the call, part of a fabulous postseason, an unlikely postseason for the Dodgers, who went on to win it all with a Kirk Gibson homer and Oral Hershiser's heroics, and really a crushing defeat for the Mets, who were the better team and who seemed to have the series in hand at that point.
And the Mets were going to go up 3-1 with a 5th game the next day at Shea Stadium. Instead, it goes 2-2, and then the Dodgers take the lead in the series, and they go out to Los Angeles. And that's the year that Hershiser finished the season with 59 consecutive scoreless innings to break the mark set by Don Drysdale, the seemingly unbreakable mark. And he wound up pitching in the 12th inning of that game. He had started game 3, comes in relief, and then winds up pitching in game 7, and the Dodgers go on to win the World Series. As Tejada leads off here in the 5th inning, 8-9-1 with Tejada, Dickey, and Pagan facing Vogelsong, who's allowed only 1 hit, but he's walked 4 along the way. And that's looped into right center field for a base hit. So Tejada, the number 8 hitter, gets on. 2nd hit for the Mets tonight, and that will bring up R.A. Dickey. Dickey grounded out in the 3rd inning. He's 2 for 27, Bob.
But he has 5 successful sacrifices this year.
And they've got Sandoval creeping in from 3rd base with Huff holding the runner on, and Dickey squares to bunt and takes the pitch low for a ball. 1-0. Good trip so far for the Mets, who started in Los Angeles after winning Sunday and capturing the final game of the series at home against the Yankees. 3 out of 4 in Los Angeles. And then the weekend here in the All-Star break. Fouled off on the bunt attempt, and the count is 1-1. The Giants in a much different position in terms of the standings, because they're in a division that's clearly winnable for them. Arizona 2nd, Colorado is 3rd, then you've got San Diego and the Dodgers having poor seasons. With the Mets, a different story. Philadelphia is great. Atlanta is very good, so you're looking at a wild card situation, if anything.
And even that's a long shot.
And Dickey lays this one down, and it's a good bunt. And Huff will go back to Tejada for the 3-4 sacrifice, and that sends the other Tejada, Ruben, to 2nd base with 1 out, and Angel Pagan coming up.
It would make no geographic sense, but a team like the Mets would do well to petition for at least a temporary transfer to the Central or the West. His Terry Collins team would probably be good enough to contend in those divisions, contend for the title in the division, not just a wild card spot.
It's like the Arizona Cardinals, though, when they played in the NFC East. You're not suggesting that the Mets play in the Western Division.
No, I'm not suggesting it. I'm just thinking about it.
Musing.
I'm musing. That's right.
That's what we do at this point in our lives. We muse a lot.
Sit back and muse. A whimsical notion.
Right. What are you doing tomorrow? I'm musing.
Yeah. Don't disturb me. I'll be at home musing.
Tejada at second base. 1-0 the count on the leadoff batter, Pagan, who hits a high fly ball to right field, and Shearholz goes back and looks up, and that one is gone. Angel Pagan hits one over the right field wall, and the Mets take the lead 2-1.
A towering drive, and the wall out there is very high. He didn't know for sure. It got over it and a couple rows in for the home run that gives the Mets the 2-1 lead. A majestic shot into the early evening night. And the Mets, who were flirting with falling behind 3-0, had Whiteside come through when the Giants were last at bat. Now claim the lead on the Pagan home run.
Third home run of the season for Angel Pagan. Turner at the plate with a count 0-1. And that's hit in the air to center field. And Torres will collect it for out number 2. So 2 gone in the 5th inning with the bases empty, and Beltran coming up. Pagan's homer landing in the first row. Of course, the kayaks are at the ready out in McCovey Cove. And through the years, there have been 56 home runs hit into the drink here in San Francisco. More than half of those, of course, by Barry Bonds. No right-handed batter has ever hit one into the water. 1-0 on Beltran, who has struck out and doubled. And that's grounded into the hole for a base hit. So Carlos Beltran, who came into the game batting .283, is 2 for 3 tonight. With 2 out, the Mets have a runner at first base, and Daniel Murphy comes up. He's grounded out and sacrificed. .70 pitches here in the 5th inning with 2 gone. 22 of those in the 2nd inning when he walked 2. Again, his control has been off tonight. Vogelsong with 4 walks and a lot of long counts. In there.
Vogelsong has thrown 1 complete game this year. With his pitch count mounting, seems unlikely he'll be around for the 9th tonight.
Especially with the Giants bullpen. I mean, you start at the back end. You know, Brian Wilson comes in at the end, and then Romo comes in before that, and Affeldt is the lefty who can come in the 7th inning. So Bochy has a very deep bullpen, and the reason the Giants, who don't hit very well, are in first place and are contenders again and did win the World Series last year is the pitching staff, starters and relievers. Bob, that's the one thing, as Murphy takes a strike, that hasn't changed in 16 years. It's all about pitching.
Although there was a stretch, and you missed most of it, where a 10-9 game was almost commonplace around the major leagues.
Had more to do with the medicine cabinet than anything else.
Than the bat rack.
Right. And that is grounded fair by Sandoval and down the left field line. And Beltran takes a wide turn at second and then holds there as the throw comes in. A 2-out single by Murphy. And the Mets now with runners at first and second with 2 down, and Jason Bay comes up. Bay has walked twice tonight. Sandoval playing way off the line against the left-handed hitter. So Bay, who had 2 home runs in the game at Dodger Stadium earlier this week, comes up hitting .248 with 6 homers and 28 runs batted in. And Dave Righetti is the Giants pitching coach, who starts to think about getting somebody up in the bullpen. One and 0.
You know, Al, when you talk about that period of time where things got out of whack in baseball, everybody enjoys the home run. Everybody enjoys a legitimate power hitter. But in addition to the questions about how all those 40, 50, and even 60 home run seasons occurred, it distorted the game, and it took away so many of the enjoyable nuances. The bunt, the hit and run, taking the extra base. When every game is just a game of bludgeon ball and home run derby, baseball is not as enjoyable as it should be.
And nowhere was it more pronounced than with the Giants and Barry Bonds. The 1-0 pitch is hit foul. Of course, everything is still in dispute about who took what when and all of that. But when you look at what Bonds did, and then you look at the way it is right now, which is the way it was for so many years, obviously you won. Beltran and Murphy on the bases. 1-1 the count on Bay. Mets have taken the lead here in the 5th inning on a 2-run homer by Angel Pagan. Off the plate. 2-1. Vogelsong pitching in Japan in 09, and he was with the same team that was managed by Terry Collins in 07 and 08. So the Mets manager knows this guy pretty well because he was pitching in Japan with another club at the time, and that's in there for a strike. 2-2. And now the crowd comes to life with 2-2, 2 out, and 2 on. 2-1 New York in the 5th inning. And the 2-2 to Bay is grounded fair. Fielded by Sandoval. Does it himself. The force at third to get out of the inning. But the Mets take the lead. 2 runs, 4 hits, lead 2-1 going to the bottom of the 5th.
Well, Al, our last half inning here on SNY, but as we've already noted, we each have some history with the Mets. The Robin Ventura grand slam single, the Mike Scioscia homer off Doc Gooden, and then this bit of business from the '73 NLCS. As this one is blooped towards short, and Tejada makes the catch to retire Vogelsong. You were the radio voice of the Reds when this happened.
This happened in Game 3, a double play, and then Pete Rose slides hard into Bud Harrelson. That fight ensues. Neither guy got thrown out of the game, but Sparky Anderson, the manager of the Reds, pulled the Reds off the field when they took the field because everything was being thrown at them. Took them off the field, and the Mets, of course, had to send that peace party out to left field, which included Yogi Berra, Rusty Staub, Willie Mays, Tom Seaver, to calm the crowd down. And the Mets went on to win the game to take a 2-1 series lead, as the batter here is Torres. It was the best of 5 in those years. The next day, and Rose that night when we went back into Manhattan at the Reds Hotel needed tremendous security. I mean, he was the villain of Gotham, and everybody wanted a piece of Pete Rose. There were a ton of cops on the floors that housed the Reds at the hotel on the east side. And as we went out to Shea Stadium the next day in the bus, as that pitch is taken high, it was very quiet. Here were the Reds who'd won 99 games. The Mets had won 82 games that year, had eked in to win the East. Heavily favored were the Reds, who were the defending National League champions. And that's a knuckler hit foul. And it was very quiet. And as the Reds bus pulled into Shea Stadium, Rose got up in front of the team on the bus and he said, "Do or die. Do or bleeping die," to get everybody stirred up. So what happened that day? Tony Perez hit, I think, a 7th inning home run to tie it. It goes to extra innings. Harry Parker's pitching for the Mets, and Rose hits a game-winning home run in the 12th inning. And that is an infield base hit for Andres Torres. So 1 out and 1 man on. So there was Rose. He had 3 hits in that game, the game winner. And then in game 5, the Mets win and go on to face Oakland in the World Series.
And stretched Oakland to 7 before finally succumbing in the World Series. And here was a Met team that just caught fire toward the end for Yogi Berra, but certainly not a team remotely of the caliber of the 2 teams they met in the postseason, which were 2 of the greatest teams of the decade.
Exactly.
The Big Red Machine of Cincinnati and that Oakland A's team.
I mean, think about it. In a division with 6 teams in those years, the Mets won the division. They didn't even have to play a 162nd game. They would have. It would have been, I think, a second game of the doubleheader against Chicago. But at 82 and 79, they clinched the Eastern Division. Crawford, giant shortstop, and that pitch will go to the backstop and send Torres to second base. Torres, the tying run, is there with 1 out.
Got to score that a wild pitch, I would guess. Although Tolley sees a lot of those when Dickey is on the mound and stops most of them.
Well, they've scored at a pass ball, which always seems unfair with a knuckleball pitcher. And that's up and away. But it always reminds us, Bob, of our great friend Bob Uecker, who, when asked, "How do you catch a knuckleball?" he said, "You wait for it to stop rolling at the backstop, and then you pick it up."
Only Ueck.
And Crawford takes ball 3. On deck is Pablo Sandoval, who scored the Giants' only run tonight after a leadoff double in the 4th inning. Mets on top 2-1 in the opening game of this 3-game weekend series in San Francisco. That's in there. 3-1. Gary and Ron, I can't believe how clean,
tidy,
spick and span. Hit foul. I was surprised that Ron didn't leave us like a 5th of Johnny Walker Black.
There they are over in the MLB Network booth. They must be appalled at the mess we left behind.
Yes, tell me about it.
These guys apparently work without notes.
There's
guys
so much.
in the SNY truck are laughing. They know this all too well.
Of course.
What's it like when Hernandez is here?
That's popped up into shallow right field, and coming in to make the catch for the second out is Beltran. So Torres remains at second base, and Pablo Sandoval will come up here. Sandoval, switch hitter, so he comes up with a base open, and you have a left-handed hitter in Huff on deck.
No matter the outcome here, Al, here we sit at AT&T Park, Vogelsong hooking up with Dickey. Compare the circumstances. Even if the score was 2-1 in the 5th inning, and it was, let's say, Ed Halicki against Jerry Koosman, and you're sitting at Candlestick. And even if it's 55 degrees, as it may be right now, it feels like it's about 25 degrees.
Well, unless Ed Halicki's pitching a no-hitter against the Mets, which he did in 1975. But the attendance in those years was so bad that one night they gave me the card, and instead of reading the number, I just began to name people who were there. Mr. and Mrs. Jim McAlpine have come down from Santa Rosa. Harvey Falukian is in from Hayward.
Harvey Faluki.
Harvey went to about 10 games a year.
Oh, he's a big fan.
Yes, he is. Falukian.
Oh, Falukian. Sorry. Hold those cards and letters, all
yes,
you Falukian fans.
Right. Falukian family. And it's a strike to the man they refer to as the Panda here in San Francisco, name given to him by Barry Zito.
Although a good deal less Panda-like now that he dropped about 35 pounds in the offseason, which has made him much quicker in the field and also speeded his bat up a bit.
Yep, he's hitting .304, and he gets jammed on that one and reaching for it. Can he get to first base in time? Yes! Duda looked like he wouldn't be able to get to first base on time. Dickey came over, but there was no way he could shovel the ball to the pitcher and has to do it himself to leave Torres the tying run on base. So at the end of 5, it remains 2-1 Mets.
An interesting play to end our 2-inning stint.
That was it. We'll be back in about 16 years. The boys are back.
Let's mess things up a little bit before Gary and Ron come back. Ruocco and Dwayne Kuiper over to the MLBN booth, and Mr. Al Michaels joins me for a couple innings here in the Bay Area.
Look at how clean this place is. I mean, we are slobs. We needed the Mayflower van to take our stuff from one booth to the next. These guys are great. They must do everything off the top of their heads.
I believe they have a whole housekeeping staff. After all, they're here every night.
Of course.
People come in and tidy up after them. Ryan Vogelsong on the short end of a 2-1 score for the moment as he faces Lucas Duda, starting things off in the 6th. Duda has lined to center and walked. He'll be followed by Josh Tolley and Ruben Tejada. The Angel Pagan home run on the 5th is the difference. 2-1 New York. Called strike 0-2.
Pretty much a typical Giants game, low scoring, close. Of course, as all Giant fans know, that's how this team's going to have to win. They're not going to score a lot of runs. The pitching is fantastic, and you win close games.
That one bounces up there. Vogelsong has not had complete command tonight. He's walked 4 and allowed 5 hits. 4 of them came in the 5th inning when the Mets scored twice.
And he's closing in on about 100 pitches.
You notice where Shearholtz is playing in right. And a called strike 3. Duda is dispatched. Generally speaking, the wind here in San Francisco, as fans in the Bay Area know, blows right to left. And the carom, if a ball hits off the wall in right field, tends to take it, because of the way the wall is angled, back toward right center field. So more often than not, except on a dead pull hitter, more often than not, the right fielder will be positioned as he is right now, well off the line.
Yeah, we had a whole meteorological explanation from Mike Krukow before the game as to the prevailing winds. I used to laugh like crazy, having done all of those games at Candlestick Park in the mid-'70s, when people would come in and talk about the prevailing winds. There was no prevailing wind. It was wind shear.
It went every which way.
Yep. If it was an airport, they would have closed it. Scottsdale Stadium.
Take your pick. Spring training, Candlestick, if you want to worship the old days, or Cooperstown, where the likes of Mays and McCovey and Marichal and Cepeda and Gaylord Perry reside, at least figuratively.
Pretty tough to worship the old days as far as the fans are concerned, and there are the retired numbers. 27 is Marichal, 24 of course is the Say Hey Kid. Through the history of the Giants, who in the modern era of baseball began back in New York in 01, and they were even before that the New York Gothams. And you know, I'm sitting here thinking about all these years and the statues and McGraw, the manager, and Christy Mathewson, and the fact that the Giants are now in their 54th season in San Francisco, which is almost as long as they were the New York Giants beginning in 1901, what's considered the modern era of baseball.
This ballpark, one of the most beautiful in the majors, just exudes respect for the Giants' history, both in New York and here in San Francisco. And a moment ago, of course, the shot of the McCovey statue, appropriately situated alongside McCovey Cove.
And Willie McCovey here on most nights. Visited with him again last night. Great to see Tito Fuentes.
Yep.
Is still here doing the Spanish radio.
Infielder on those 60s Giants.
Yeah, in fact, when you and I talked about doing this game, I was hoping there's Tito. He and Chris Spire forming the Giants double play combination.
I thought you were about to say they formed the broadcast combination, which would be very interesting indeed.
Extremely.
The 2-2 pitch is fouled off.
But I really thought the count was going to pitch tonight. I figured Montefusco, it would be his turn in the rotation.
And if he wasn't ready, they'd go to Jim Barr or Ed Halicki, right?
Without, maybe even Ron Bryant.
Bring in the lefty.
Yeah.
This Giants history lesson brought to you courtesy of the Al Michaels Foundation for Broadcast Excellence. The 2-2 pitch.
Non-profit.
Rolled to short. Crawford is up with it. And there's the second out in the 6th.
But this is great fun to come into this ballpark. And as almost all Giants fans know, the checkered history of this franchise going back to '76 when Horace Stoneham ran out of money. And Bob Lurie had to save the team along with a Phoenix cattleman by the name of Bud Herseth. And they bought the team for $8 million. And Lurie and Herseth had never met until an hour before they made the announcement at the Mark Hopkins Hotel. They'd been put together by some investment firm. Each put in $4 million, and that saved the Giants for San Francisco.
Strike one to Tejada. We may not get to it in this half inning, but we will before we take our leave. You have a personal connection to one of the voices of the Giants, Mr. Dwayne Kuiper.
I saw the only, well, Dwayne Kuiper came up. I think he had something like 3,800 plate appearances. I did every one of his home runs.
Which is a total of one.
August 29th, 1977, Cleveland.
And he likes to claim that was the first time you used the phrase, "Do you believe in miracles?"
That's how I rehearsed it for Lake Placid.
And he managed to jack one out of the park against Steve Stone.
Yep. Who
later would be a Cy Young Award winner.
And later became a
partner
of mine. And here it was in Cleveland. There was Kuiper. Huge crowd on hand that night, as you can see. Then the ball caroms back onto the field. And I have no idea if Dwayne ever wound up with the baseball or not. But he'd been to the plate about 1,000 times before that. The one and only.
Flowing mane beneath that batting helmet.
Right.
A mammoth shot at least 2 rows in.
In the mistake by the lake. So think of Kuiper's career. He got to play at Cleveland Municipal Stadium and Candlestick Park.
But for those who persevere, there is a reward at the end. And now his office is AT&T Park.
Think about that. It's pretty much like residing at Alcatraz and Rikers Island and then moving to Hillsborough.
Al with yet another arcane reference, but amusing nonetheless.
Let me put it to you this way. Hillsborough is like, you know, the not the Hamptons, but what's the top suburb in New York?
Well, the Hamptons is well out there.
Well out there, but Hillsborough is Scarsdale.
Scarsdale's a good call.
There you go.
High rent district. 1-2 pitch coming to Tejada. 2-2.
Well, I guess Atherton has usurped Hillsborough now as the heart of Silicon Valley. There you go. That's the end of that. Let's get back to baseball.
I know you aced every geography course you ever took.
Right.
Practically memorized the atlas. Comes in handy now and then. The 2-2 pitch. And the count runs full. You look out from the broadcast booth and take in the full expanse of this ballpark. There cannot be a more appealing vista in all of baseball. There are some that are in the discussion. Pittsburgh, Baltimore. There are others who have longer history. Fenway, Wrigley. But this is a perfect baseball setting.
You know, they got it right, because we've seen situations where cities have built stadiums and they'll build it and then they'll say, oh, you know, why didn't we think of this, or this doesn't quite work, or the seats don't face the appropriate spots on the diamond.
Yep.
And you look around this place and you go, this is perfect.
They did just about everything right here. Another 3-2 pitch. And ball 4, although Vogelsong, who has been unhappy with the plate umpire David Rackley all night, both Vogelsong and Whiteside thought they had Tejada struck out. Instead, it's Vogelsong's 5th walk. And Bochy stalking up and down, really steamed. Rackley thought it was a bit low. Whiteside was on his way to the dugout. Vogelsong was walking off the mound.
Sure.
But Tejada was strolling to first. So now Dickey bats and cuts and misses.
Vogelsong had only 27 walks in 84 innings coming in, so that's less than 1 per 3 innings. And it may seem like no big deal with Dickey at the plate, but if you get the number 8 hitter, that means the number 9 hitter starts the next inning instead of having the leadoff hitter up there.
Dickey pokes one to the right side. Tejada can't come up with it, and it's an infield hit.
Well, it is a bigger deal than just having the leadoff hitter coming up.
Righetti coming out. That was Vogelsong's 101st pitch as he tries to get through the 6th.
And for the moment, the Giants have no activity in the bullpen, but that is going to end in a couple of seconds here, because they will have some action down there. It'll be
Jeremy Affeldt headed down there.
Right, who hurt himself the other night, strained a calf muscle when he celebrated. Had to keep him out once, but the lefty goes down to warm up, and then, as all Giant fans know, you get down to guys like Romo and Lopez, and then Wilson to close it out if they have the lead.
Here, Al, here's a little slice of history.
Oh, look at that. That's Bob Lurie. We talked about Bob. The great Lon Simmons. I loved Lon. Lon was my partner back in 1976 with Ron Bryant, who was the ace of the staff in 1974. And, well, I had some stylist, didn't I?
I like the jacket.
I borrowed it from Charlie Fox, who was the manager at that time.
A bold pattern is always wise, something that will moray on camera.
Charlie was a Beau Brummel. He used to call me. We're on the road. He says, "Are you wearing that jacket tonight?" I said, "What is it to you, Charlie? Is this like a wedding?"
Here's Pagan, who homered in his last at-bat, rolls this one meekly to second. Dickey fell down between first and second. And Tejada throws Pagan out, and Vogelsong avoids further difficulty.
Flash forward to the bottom of the 4th inning. Dave Parker barely, by inches, just misses a home run. Candy Maldonado with the hesitation, allowing Jose Canseco to score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earth. We are still, as we can tell, on the air, and I guess you are hearing us, even though we have no picture and no return audio, and we will be back, we hope, from San Francisco in just a moment.
You know, Al, kidding you in the last half inning about your obsession with geography and maps, but it really came in handy that night amid the tragedy of the earthquake of the 1989 World Series. That and the fact that you had lived in this area for a while. You knew all the streets and byways, and you were able to identify it all when you donned the newsman's hat. ABC had no presence here except their sports presence. So Ted Koppel and Peter Jennings in Washington and in New York were relying on you, and luckily you knew just about every inch of the landscape here.
And it's only 22 years ago, but things would be covered so much differently and more thoroughly these days.
Huff grounds out to start the bottom of the 6th as Dickey clings to that 2-1 lead.
We were lucky in the sense that we had the blimp. Of course, there is the Bay Bridge, and it was that one section of the cantilever portion. which went down. And, of course, I said it on the air at the time. I can't think of a more important artery in any major metropolitan area than the Bay Bridge, connecting the East Bay to San Francisco.
Shearholtz drives one to deep right. If it's fair, this is a tie game, and it is. Splash. Floating in McCovey Cove, and at this point, Shearholtz ought to be floating around the bases. The way he has swung the bat of late. 2 home runs on Wednesday night, including the 14th inning game winner. And this one to tie it in the 6th. There's a guy who came prepared, not just to grab the ball, but to celebrate Shearholtz.
He did it 48 hours ago to beat San Diego, and he keeps moving up in the lineup. And Bruce Bochy was posed the question the other night, what about Shearholtz in the cleanup spot? He said, well, I like him where he is right now, 6th, and now tonight he's 5th. And I guess by after the All-Star break, he will be 4th. The way it's going right now.
That was his 7th homer of the year. Huff and Sandoval lead the team with 8 apiece. Rowan chops one. Charging is Tejada to throw him out.
Nate Shearholtz, Nate the Great.
At least of late.
Very good. Aye, aye, mate.
And at this rate, he will be hitting cleanup.
At this rate, we'll be out of work tomorrow.
When you're only on for a couple innings, you should sort of throw caution to the winds, I guess.
Correct. And we're better to throw them to the winds than San Francisco.
Well, that ball was hammered.
Yep.
Dickey got one up around the letters, and Shearholtz just jumped on it. So here's Miguel Tejada, who prior to Wednesday night, of course, had played a lot of shortstop, a lot of third base, had never even taken ground balls at second base. Handled 5 chances flawlessly Wednesday against the Padres and has played second base without serious incident here tonight.
Giants need anybody to play second base with Freddie Sanchez on the disabled list. They hope to have him back maybe by the middle of August. Bill Hall got hurt last night, several stitches.
Spiked.
He's gone. And so Tejada may be playing a lot of second base in the near future.
How to play down the right field line. So Angel Pagan with a 2-run homer in the top of the 5th that briefly gave the Mets the 2-1 lead. Then Shearholtz with the homer that ties it and makes a happy paddler out of that guy. Swing and a miss, but the ball gets away. Tejada to first, aboard on the strikeout, which is an occupational hazard for a knuckleballer like Dickey.
And once again, you throw the knuckleball and anything can happen. And at the end, a swing and a miss. Totally can't handle it. And the Giants have a 2-out base runner. The go-ahead runner first base, and Whiteside, the number 8 hitter, coming up.
Shearholtz, the man of the hour. Whiteside a chance to don hero's laurels as he did last night with a home run against the Padres.
Now the Giants will get Affeldt back up in the bullpen. He was up when Vogelsong was in trouble in the prior half inning, and the reason he's getting up right now is because if Whiteside gets on, you get the pitcher due up next. And for the moment, they already have Cody Ross out in the on-deck circle.
Whiteside hammers one to center, pretty well hit. On the run and hauling it in is Angel Pagan. So the Giants settle for the game-tying homer off the bat of the sizzling Nate Shearholtz. Up in the zone and out into McCovey Cove. Jim Leland and his Marlins, a wild card entry, win the World Series in 1997. Called that on NBC with Bob Uecker and Joe Morgan. Of course, the tie-in, there was the young Edgar Renteria at age 23 with the winning base hit in the World Series. And later, at the tail end of his career, he's the MVP of last year's World Series for these Giants.
And what's better than a 7th game of the World Series in baseball that goes down to the end? Nothing. Not a thing.
And that one went extra innings.
Well, maybe this one will too.
With the whole thing hinging on every pitch.
We go to the 7th inning, and it will be Turner, Beltran, and Murphy. Game tied at 2. Turner tonight is 0 for 3. Grounded out twice and fly to center. Batting .258. Number 2 hitter in the Giants order. Affeldt stays up in the bullpen. Because after Turner, you've got Beltran as the switch hitter. Then you go to the left-hand hitting Daniel Murphy. And Vogelsong up and over the 100 pitch count. One and two. Be interesting to see if Vogelsong gets into the game on Tuesday night in Phoenix. I mean, he'll be well rested. You take a look at somebody like Kane, who can't even go because he's going to pitch on Sunday, and I'm sure Bochy will, if he can, get Ryan into the game.
For those who keep track of such things, the home run in the last inning by Nate Schierholtz was his first ever splash home run into the Cove. He previously hit one that landed in the drink on a bounce. Pablo Sandoval had the only other pure water shot this year for the Giants prior to that one from Schierholtz.
The only pure water shot?
Yeah.
Just one?
It's filtered water. Unpure water you wouldn't want to, it's not potable, you know what I mean?
No. 2 and 2. I know all Giant fans know that if you watch the telecast, but I'd forgotten about it. I was surprised that no right-handed batter had ever hit one.
Well, when you consider the height of the wall and there's an expanse beyond the stands before you get to the Cove,
right,
you'd really have to have some opposite field power to send one into the Cove from the right side.
And that's grounded down to short. And one up and one down. Crawford takes care of Turner, and Beltran will come up. Let's go back to the World Series with Renteria last year against Texas.
He did have a flair for the big moments in the big stage, didn't he?
A decade apart.
Yep.
More than that.
Both as a youngster with the Marlins and as a stage-old veteran with the Giants.
Carlos Beltran tonight with a single and a double. 2 for 3. Each team 2 runs, 6 hits, and the only error in the game belongs to the Mets. And that's grounded toward the middle, and it's Tejada backhanding and throwing. And there's a guy who looks like he's played second base his entire career.
Well, when you're a baseball player, maybe you're just a baseball player.
Right.
Some play.
So they have to go to Tejada, a shortstop and a third baseman, his entire career. Second game as a second baseman, and a great play to take a base hit away from Beltran. 2 down, and Murphy to the plate right now. Murphy 1 for 2 plus a sacrifice. 2 down, 7th inning. 2-2.
Al, in contrast to Vogelsong, who has now moved well past 100 pitches, R.A. Dickey is yet to throw 80. Likely that Vogelsong will be hit for in the bottom half of this inning.
He's due to lead off, so this figures to be his last inning of work. And that's hit in the air in foul territory, and Sandoval will give chase, but run out of room at the tarp. 111 pitches right now for Vogelsong, right up to the moment. And if you watch the Giant games, and most of you do, you know the whole story. We talked to Bruce Bochy before the game, and I asked him the chances that Vogelsong was going to make this team in spring training when spring training started, and Bruce said 0.
Not only makes the team, cracks the rotation when Barry Zito goes on the DL in April, capitalizes on that, and a guy with a sub-500 career record in the majors and an ERA of almost 6 pitches his way into the All-Star game.
And so now you have Vogelson, who's established himself in the rotation, and Zito is back and pitching well. Excess of riches.
And back from really oblivion in Zito's case. The Giants had to figure, look, we just got to swallow hard and pay off the contract. This guy's close to worthless.
Right.
He's 3-0 with an ERA under 2. In fact, under 1.5, 1.29 since coming off the disabled list. Threw 8 strong innings last night against the Padres. Only 4 hits, 7 strikeouts, no walks.
And that's hit into left field for a base hit. So Murphy picks up his 2nd hit of the night. And that'll bring up Jason Bay, who has walked twice and grounded into a force. Another close game. The Giants playing so many of them. So many one-run games.
Fully half their victories, 25 of the 50, have been by 1 run. They have the best record in one-run games of any team in the majors, 25-12.
So many games the Giants play. Nail biters. Sort of a ballpark manicurist. Murphy, the runner at first base with 2 down. First game of a 3-game weekend series. And then the All-Star break. A 1-hopper to Sandoval. And that'll do it. Vogelson pitching 7 strong innings. Tied 2-2.
Out in the 9th inning. 6-0 Giants. Here's the stretch. The pitch to Garrett. Swung on a grounder to Montañez. Shortstop touches the bat. No-hitter. Ed Halecki in his first full season in the major leagues. Not even full because he really started it in the minors. Came up in the middle of last season. Was 1-8 in 1974. Sent to the minors until May. He has pitched so well all season long, and it culminates in a no-hitter before a crowd of 24,132 at Candlestick Park.
You didn't know they had that one in the archives,
no,
did you?
I didn't. Somebody taped that. Somebody had it on a cassette, and I thanked them because I had never heard that. To this day, Ed Halecki throwing that no-hitter. And then the following season, at the end of the year, the Count, John Montefusco, pitched a no-hitter.
Here's Cody Ross batting for Vogelsong in the bottom of the 7th.
And Ross to lead off as the pinch hitter, to be followed by Torres and Crawford. 2-2 in the bottom of the 7th inning. I have never told this story, but I swear to you, my broadcast partner that year was Art Ekman. And the Giants had played in the Cooperstown game, the Hall of Fame game. We had to go there on a Monday in August between New York and Pittsburgh to play the Red Sox. And the night before the game, we are sitting in a restaurant in Utica with Ed Halecki and John Montefusco. As Ross hits one in the shallow center field, and that's going to drop in for a base hit. And Ross takes a wide turn and holds on. So a looping bloop single to get the bottom of the 7th inning started for Ross. We're sitting there, the 4 of us, and I'm telling Halecki and Montefusco, there's nothing greater for an announcer than a no-hitter. And it can't be any greater for a pitcher either. And they're sitting there, and I'm telling them about no-hitters I had seen, no-hitters I had heard about. And wouldn't you know it, Halecki throws a no-hitter in August, and Montefusco throws one the next year.
They were just trying to help you out.
There you go.
Boost your career.
Right.
There's Emmanuel Burris, speedy utility man. who runs for Ross, who has a balky hamstring and really can't do anything but pinch hit at this point, and delivered the bloop single.
And Torres takes low, ball 1. So Vogelsong goes 7 innings and gives up 2 runs tonight. Cannot lose the game, can only win it if the Giants take the lead and are never headed or have no decision. And that's grounded foul off to the right to count 1 ball and 1 strike. Tim Burdack now gets up in the Mets bullpen. Lefty.
There's Burdack. This one has all the makings, Al, of another giant nail biter, another 1-run game, another down-to-the-wire affair, which seems to be all they play. Call it torture, or this year's version, torment. They usually wind up on the long end of it.
I'm smelling 19 innings.
You know what? I wouldn't mind. In this ballpark, the one time you and I get to work together, I wouldn't mind. As long as they bring us something to eat around the 14th, I'm okay.
Well, I'm working on 16 years rest, so I'm ready.
Right.
And that's hit in the air to shallow right center field. And this time the catch will be made by Pagan for the out. So Burris at first base now with 1 out, and Brandon Crawford, who has struck out, grounded out, and fly to right field 0 for 3 coming up. This ballpark, and of course we can't say enough about it, we just love this place. The Giants selling out every game this season. Every game. You know, Bob, I keep thinking about when I was doing the Giants are playing in a terrible ballpark with a bad team, going bankrupt, drawing nobody in horrible weather. And we all looked south, fans and players, with Dodger envy. Because there were the Dodgers playing in a magnificent, fairly new stadium, about a dozen years in the second market, going to the World Series every other year, terrific teams, and selling out every night. And now, 36, 37 years later, think about it.
And the Dodger flag is at the bottom of that pole.
In so many ways, too. And here are the Dodgers in Chapter 11, announcing tickets sold, but it's really kind of a ghost town most nights, in last place, a complete mess. And the Giants playing in this ballpark, world champions, in first place, and selling out every night. Go figure, as you'd like to say.
Reversal of fortunes.
And it's hit high in the air to right center field. And Beltran tells Pagan he'll take care of it, and he's not lying. 2 down.
That's Willie Mays Plaza, Al, beautifully lit to enhance the effect. You know, there are many striking statues that pay tribute to the iconic players of various franchises. I don't like any better than this one, not just because it's a terrific likeness of Willie as he completes a swing, but engraved on either side aren't just his career achievements, but the most poetic tributes to him over the years, from managers, from ball players, from sports writers, that capture the idea, even for those too young to have seen him play, that the numbers alone only tell a small portion of the story. You had to see him play. You had to feel what it was like to watch Willie Mays.
In the air to right center field, and Pagan will hold this one in for the out. Good to be with you, folks. You get your boys back when we go to the 8th. Game tied at 2.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, we're back, and this MLB Network special is brought to you by Chevrolet and their award-winning cars, trucks, and crossovers, and sponsored in part by NCAA Football 12, rated everyone in stores July 12. EA Sports, it's in the game. And by Sprint, all together now. With Al Michaels, I'm Bob Costas. A look at the starters. Vogelsong is now done. 7 hits, 5 walks, struck out a couple and yielded 2 runs. Dickey's numbers through 7 as well. And here is Javier Lopez out of the Giant bullpen. He's been very reliable to this point in the season. When you think about the Giant bullpen, especially those who don't follow the team day in and day out, of course you think of Brian Wilson, an all-star again this year, 48 saves a year ago, 25 saves this year, as well as 6 wins out of the bullpen. But their setup men, the bridge from the starters to Wilson, have been outstanding all season long, and Lopez has been part of that. Nick Evans, just up from the minor leagues, will pinch hit here for Lucas Duda in the top of the 8th. R.A. Dickey hoping his mates can come through here and give him the better part of the decision. Evans rolls one towards Sandoval, who charges and gets him. Let's find out what's going on elsewhere as we check with Ahmed in the studio.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, Chevrolet update here, and we got a final in Philadelphia. A walk-off home run in a crucial series between the Braves and the Phillies. Raul Ibanez sending the home fans home happy in that one. His 11th home run of the year, giving the Phillies a 3-2 win. We'll have highlights of this game, plus a look all around the league coming up next on Quick Pitch. Bob, we'll send it back to you.
Ahmed, thanks very much. Here's Josh Tolley facing Javier Lopez. The Giant bullpen over the last 3 games has strung together 11 consecutive scoreless innings.
And you combine that with their starters, and that's how the Giants win. That's how they won the world title last year. That's why they were in first place this season.
Crawford squeezes the pop-up. 2 quick outs in the New York 8th. Lopez is 33 years old, born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. 6'4" and 218. Giants got him at the trade deadline a year ago, and he's been very effective for the world champs.
So you bring him in a tie game in the 8th inning. You still have Romo, who's throwing in the bullpen right now, and of course at the end of the night, if you have the lead, you bring in Brian Wilson.
Ruben Tejada is the hitter with 2 out and nobody on in the 8th. Pitcher spot due next. Scott Hairston is in the on-deck circle. The left-hander Tim Burdack continues to get warm for the Mets. And even in July, you literally need to get warm before you come into the game in San Francisco.
A little less so than you had to at Candlestick Park all of those years.
Yeah, this is a pleasant kind of cool, not a bitter, biting, uncomfortable kind of cold that you experience at Candlestick more often than not. It always amazed me to see people literally in July and August wearing parkas, wool caps, scarves at a baseball game.
And when Bobby Mercer spent his 2 years with the Giants after that 1-for-1 trade for Bobby Bonds, he kept his bats warm in the sauna.
Tejada goes down swinging. Lopez makes quick work of the Mets in the top of the 8th, and it remains a 2-2 tie.
After the grueling regular basketball season, we're now in month 9 of the playoffs.
No, Daddy, don't touch me there.
And to think we received no Oscar consideration.
All I know is the following.
Yeah.
You, who convinced me to do this game, and I am having fun doing this.
I also convinced you to do basketball.
You convinced me to do basketball.
So I need to make it up to you tonight.
And leave it to the Hollywood studios, of course, to tell me a bald-faced lie. So I'm making my deal, and they say it's a most favored nations arrangement, which means that you're going to make at least as much as everybody else in that category. So all of the announcers, Dan Patrick's going to do it. We're all going to make the same.
I just had a better agent than the rest of the guys.
Long story short, they're lying to me. I don't know that, but you and I, late in the day, get giddy, and you say to me, well, at least it's a great payday, and I say, what? So after a coin flip, I then find out that he's making 3 times as much as I am. 5 times. So I want you to know, as a most favored nation, you were Monaco and I was Mongolia. But you know what? At the end of the day,
yeah, you got yours.
I had some pretty good loyalty work done and made the same.
R.A. Dickey is done. He's going to come out of here with a no decision. Tim Burdack is going to come out of the bullpen. Aubrey Huff is going to lead it off in the bottom of the 8th. He's grounded out 3 times tonight. Brian Wilson is getting ready in the Giant bullpen in case San Francisco should score here and give him a chance for the save. Nick Evans, who pinch hit for Duda, stays in the game and plays first base. And Huff rolls one toward the middle. Turner comes up with it, and his quick throw gets him. So that'll bring up Shearholtz, who walloped a homer into McCovey Cove his last time up in the 6th to bring us to this point, tied at 2. He has struck out and delivered both Giants runs. The first with a sacrifice fly in the 4th, the second with his homer in the 6th.
They call him Nate the Great, and that's exactly what he's been over the past couple of weeks. And we talked about it earlier. The fact he's been hitting 7th and then 6th and now 5th. And he might be batting in the 4th spot after the All-Star break, the way things are going.
The Mets did not double switch, so the pitcher spot leads off in the top of the 9th, meaning that Burdick, even if he gets the Giants 1-2-3 here, is working just this 1 inning. Even though it's been 16 years for you, Al, you know this as well as anybody else.
Right.
This copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of the Office of the Commissioner of Baseball. Here, you do the rest.
It may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form, and the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without express written consent
of Major League Baseball.
At gunpoint. There you go. So don't fool around.
As a condition of citizenship, in addition to the Pledge of Allegiance and other civics-oriented questions, you should have to be able to recite that to prove that you're an American.
Under God.
The 2-1 pitch. So Burdick with a dangerous delivery coming now to the sizzling hot Shearholtz. Aaron Rowan is on deck. And time is called.
Shearholtz, so typical of so many of the Giants, with careers that have spanned a number of years, a lot of minor league games, up and down.
Ball 4 skips to the backstop. And Shearholtz is aboard with 1 out.
I mean, it is, when you think about it, the collection of guys as Collins will go to the mound. He's got Beato in the bullpen. Pedro is ready to come in with Aaron Rowan coming to the plate, and the Mets will make the pitching change here. And we will be back after this.
But Burdick will not.
Pedro Beato warming up. You know, Bob, I was thinking about when I was doing the Giants, the difference between then and now. Candlestick, AT&T, bad team in bankruptcy, world champions. The contrast. Let me tell you one story. In 1975 or 6, the Giants second baseman is Darryl Thomas. Had a pretty good career over 12 or 13 years. Dodgers, Giants, Padres. So he's in a slump. There is Darryl Thomas, switch hitter. And so I think Wes Western, who's managing the team at that point, wants to give him a rest. Mike Phillips is going to be the second baseman. It's a day game. 2,300 people are there. Phillips gets hurt turning a double play, second or third inning. So Thomas has to come into the game. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes. No Thomas. 10 minutes. 12 minutes later, Thomas finally emerges from the dugout. And in those days, we had no ring down phone even to find out what's going on. So after the game is over. I'm walking through the Giants clubhouse. I see Mike Murphy, the clubhouse man. I say, Mike, what was the deal with Thomas? He said, we couldn't find him. I said, well, where was he? He said, we finally found him. He was out in the parking lot with his shower shoes.
What?
And sanitaries, washing his car. And that's how much the Giants cared about winning in the 70s.
But you have to admire a man who takes good care of his ride.
Yes, right.
Did he have one of those air fresheners, those little Christmas tree things hanging from the rear view?
You know,
those are always nice.
I always considered myself a top-notch journalist, but I never followed through on that.
Aaron Rowan rolls a double play ball towards short. They get one, and they get them both. So Beato comes in and makes quick work of the Giants in the bottom of the 8th. It remains a 2-2 tie. Al, something unusual during the break. Javier Lopez, who had retired the Mets 1-2-3 in the 8th inning, went out to the mound and warmed up. And then Bruce Bochy walked out to the hill, yanked him, and brings in Brian Wilson as closer in the 9th inning of a 2-2 game. Now, in the 14-inning game, the night before last, Wilson worked 2 innings. Then he saved the game by pitching the 9th last night, his 25th save of the year. So I would assume that this would be his only inning tonight, and they'll just hope that he holds the fort and they can win it in the bottom of the 9th.
From time to time, they let him go 2 innings. In fact, they let him in Detroit go a 2nd inning, and he got knocked out of the game, a blown save, and that was the night, I think it was a week ago tonight, that he took the bat to the Gatorade cooler, and that made, of course, every highlight show. But it is unusual to see him come in this situation, especially since they had his setup man in the bullpen. Then you had Lopez coming out.
Now, maybe part of this was a strategic move by Bochy in that Scott Hairston had been announced as the pinch hitter. So now if they pull him back, Hairston is a right-handed hitter. If they pull him back, they've burned him.
Right.
So Bochy outmaneuvered Collins here a little bit.
Of course, he had to make sure that the announcement was made, because had it not been made, Collins could have brought Hairston back and he wouldn't have been in the game. But once you're announced as a pinch hitter, you are then in the game. But still, to bring in Wilson in a tie game is slightly unusual, but nonetheless, it's a big game for the Giants at this particular point, and he goes with the closer.
In addition to his 25 saves, he has, as you see, 6 relief wins, an uncommonly high total. A few of those were because he blew saves and then his team rallied. But a few others were because Bochy used him in situations like this.
There were a few vultured wins, which of course always reminds us, when we think of the vulture, of Phil Regan years ago, the relief pitcher, and that was his nickname.
With the Dodgers.
So Scott Hairston, a .238 hitter during the regular season. He's batting in the 9 spot with Pagan and Turner following. And that's grounded, just fouled outside third. 1 ball, 1 strike.
You know, Al, you look at Brian Wilson, who strikes a fearsome figure on the mound and one of the game's most colorful characters. There's another side. Yesterday, 1,000 kids came to the ballpark. Underprivileged kids, courtesy of Brian Wilson, bought them all tickets, bought them all baseball gloves, and then met with them in the stands and had a chat with them before the game.
Giants are very good at that, at the community relations aspect, and they work very hard at it. And it's great being they're a city team too. I mean, they're right in the middle of the city. It's beautiful. There's a vibrancy around this place, and it's easier for them to interact than it would be for teams that, even at Candlestick Park, I mean, it was nowhere. You had to drive to it. This place, you walk to it. There are schools around here. There are hospitals around here. In fact, it's so convenient for some guys, in particular Bruce Bochy, as that's fouled away. We were talking to Bruce about where do you live. He said across the street. You mean you walk to work? He walks to work. And they have some very nice condos in the area. And he bought one of them, and that's home.
I said, how long does it take? He said 30 seconds.
At least the crowd doesn't keep him up at night. To the backstop.
At 94.
And they said high in the air to deep left field, and that one is gone to give the Mets the lead.
Well, that move really blew up in Bruce Bochy's face.
Well, he may have outmaneuvered Collins to get Hairston into the game and then bring in the right-hander. And the next thing you know, you've got your bullpen ace on the mound, and you're down 3-2.
Fastball a bit above belt level, out over the plate. Hairston launches it to left and snaps the tie.
And now a bunt attempt is fouled at the plate. Pagan accounting for the other Mets scoring with a 2-run homer in the 5th inning.
That was Hairston's second pinch hit home run this year and the 5th pinch hit home run of his career.
One and one.
So you got a 3-2 game, but 3 home runs in the game.
I want this baby to go 19.
I know you do.
A lot. You know, I'm working on 16 years rest for crying out loud.
You got a lot left in the tank.
You sure?
I'm hoping.
Yeah, right. And the 2-1 pitch is fouled back.
Now the tables have been turned, and it's the Mets who get their closer up. Frankie Rodriguez down the right field line getting loose.
Now when the Giants come up in the bottom of the 9th inning, they have the bottom of the order. So that means it's Miguel Tejada, Eli Whiteside, and then the pitcher's spot. It's K-Rod, and the pitch fouled back here. So it remains 2-2.
And what will Bruce Bochy's options be? Mike Fontenot has just come off the disabled list today with Bill Hall going on, left-handed hitter. Pat Burrell is available from the right side. And then there's his second catcher, Chris Stewart. That's all he's got left.
Wilson thought he had him. And David Rackley, the plate umpire, says no. 3-2. Slap foul to stay alive.
Well, look at Pagan and how intense he is as he peers out toward the pitcher's mound. A stare down between Wilson and Pagan is an epic confrontation. Who's going to blink first?
And the 3-2 to Pagan is grounded foul into the Mets bullpen. So it remains 3 balls and 2 strikes. Full house, AT&T. The Giants have sold out every game this season. About halfway through the year. And that's lined to center field and deep and spinning around and then dropping the ball is Torres. And into second goes Pagan. So it looked like the center fielder Torres was able to regain a beat on the ball as he went back, but he spun around and did the 360. And winding up at second base is Pagan.
We haven't received the scoring yet. Hit his glove. E8. An error on Torres in center field. Willie Mays is in the ballpark tonight. He has his own suite. And although Willie wouldn't say it himself, I guarantee somebody seated nearby just turned to Willie Mays and said, Willie, you would have had that easily. And it's true.
And Willie would have said amen. And here's a bunt attempt, and Wilson's going to make the catch. And Wilson had to make sure that he didn't collide with Whiteside, who went out there. He was ready to make the catch himself. So Pagan remains at second. Turner tries to bunt the runner over to third and can. And that will bring Beltran to the plate, and it will also send Bochy to the mound.
An easier play for Wilson coming forward than Whiteside, scampering up out of the crouch, and the pitcher took it.
And bringing in the left-hander here means that with Wilson coming out, that Bochy would rather have the switch hitter Beltran batting from the right side than the left.
Wilson muttering to himself.
Yep.
He's been known to have a few blow-ups directed at himself and at his own infrequent failures, and he is not a happy man right now.
Well, that was quite a scene in Detroit the other day, and even though he was angry and upset, you know, you reach the point, and granted he's taking it out on a jug of Gatorade or whatever was in that jug, but that's almost a surefire way to hurt yourself. And through the years, so many pitchers ridiculously and stupidly have punched walls and been put on the disabled list. So who knows what's going on in the tunnel or in the Giants clubhouse right now. But Bochy makes that move and it backfires on him. And now he has to go to the bullpen and bring in Jeremy Affeldt, the left-hander, the guy we talked about earlier, who injured himself, strained his calf the other night. When he celebrated, he jumped into the air and then reached for his calf and had to spend the night on the shelf.
Here's a guy who has led an interesting and colorful life. His dad was in the Air Force, stationed in Guam. As an 8-year-old, a lifeguard had to save little Jeremy, swimming happily around in the vicinity of a shark who had made its way close to shore. After that, Jeremy says, well, I'm never going back in the water. Gets married, goes on his honeymoon to Bora Bora. His wife coaxes him to take a swim. And no sooner does he get into the ocean than here comes another shark. He turns and skedaddles back to the beach and has never been in the water since. I mean, he's taken a shower or a bath, I'm sure, but for recreational purposes.
How do you know this? How do you know
I have
this?
a lot of time on my hands. Not all of it well spent, evidently, but
tell me about it. Misspent middle age. So Carlos Beltran batting right-handed. Mets trying to pick up another run here with one out in the top of the ninth inning. Again, the Giants were the bottom of the order when they hit in the bottom of the ninth inning. That means Tejada, Whiteside, and the pinch hitter for the pitcher. And the runner going to the third. Whiteside's throw is not in time, and that one was stolen on Affeldt. That's a great jump for Pagan, who had reached on the two-base error, charged to Torres, and now he winds up swiping third base.
So Turner couldn't sacrifice, but Pagan got himself to third.
Very strange ninth inning. Bring in Wilson in a tie game. Give up the home run. The error. The failed sacrifice, as Bob just said. And then the easy steal. The Giants have to play the infield up. And the 1-0 pitch is wrapped into left center field, and that's going to make it 4-2. Beltran with his 3rd hit of the night and his 58th run batted in this season, and it is 4-2 New York.
Well, Carlos Beltran must be using a bat with good vibrations. You know, he takes each of his bats when he gets a new shipment and he taps them and listens for the vibrations. And the higher the sound, the better the bat. He learned this from Edgar Martinez, the great designated hitter with the Seattle Mariners when Beltran was in the American League with Kansas City. So he's very meticulous. He weighs each of his bats on a digital scale to within a fraction of an ounce. And then the bats that don't measure up when he taps them, he consigns them to batting practice. The good ones he uses in the game.
And that's a base hit into right field by the diving Huff. And there are runners at first and second. And Romo is in the bullpen. So 2 on now with still only 1 out. And Bay coming to the plate with the Mets up by 2. And that's going to provoke another visit to the mound and another pitching change.
3 hits now for Murphy, plus a sacrifice earlier in the game.
And Ramirez is coming in to pitch for the Giants with the score 4-2. Well, this was last week. It was last Friday night. Interleague play. The Giants were in Detroit. Wilson had blown the lead, and then this takes place in the dugout.
And then afterwards,
little humor the next day.
Reminds me of when Carlos Zambrano, who can become unhinged now and then, had one of his great meltdowns for the Cubs, and Lou Piniella was still managing the ball club then, and he just pounded on the drink dispenser in the dugout at Wrigley Field. And I asked Piniella the next day, did he destroy the machine? He said, not exactly, but when I went to get Gatorade, it now gives me Hawaiian Punch.
Sweet Lou. Ramirez comes in to face Bay. The Mets have runners at first and second with only 1 out in the 9th inning, in a game in which they trailed 1-0, took the lead 2-1. The Giants tied the game on the Scherholz home run in the 6th. And now the Mets with 2 runs in the top of the 9th inning. And that's high for a ball. Turned out that Wilson, when he grabbed the bat, I think it was of the catcher, Chris Stewart. And that turned out to be Stewart's favorite bat.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. 2-0. Two and 1 to count.
Well, no sooner do we mention it than the lads in the truck. There's Larry Rothschild, who's now the pitching coach for Joe Girardi with the Yankees, but then was with the Cubs. Mike Quaddy was a coach then, now the Cubs manager, and all of them just shaking their heads. Rothschild almost got in the line of fire there. When Zambrano loses it, all bets are off. And he did that day at Wrigley.
And the 2-1 pitch is swung on him. There's 2 balls and 2 strikes to count. Giants going to San Diego right after the All-Star break, staying in the division, and the Dodgers then come in here. And that's low. So they count 3 balls and 2 strikes with 1 out. And we'll see if Collins is going to send the runners here. Got Evans, who came into the game as a pinch hitter, on deck. So Beltran and Murphy at second and first. And the 3-2 pitch, and Off they go, and the pitch is fouled at the plate. Remains 3-2.
Well, Al, if this holds up, Brian Wilson, of course, gets the loss. Pedro Beato, who threw one pitch and induced a double play, stands to be the winner for the Mets.
And the Mets in the bullpen with Rodriguez, who has that clause that every Mets fan knows about. 55 games finished, and it's worth 17 million big ones to him
for next year.
Right. Out of whose account, we don't know.
Much mystery surrounding Met finances
on every level. And that's foul back. So the full house, but pretty quiet right now because their World Championship club down by 2 in the 9th inning. And that's fouled away again.
You know, Al, we have rhapsodized a bit, and I think rightly so, about this ballpark and the way it's situated alongside the bay here in downtown San Francisco. But even now, at this point of the night, look at these seagulls just fluttering by.
There they are.
It's just a lovely scene here.
It's 10 o'clock. There they are looking for Tippy Hedren.
Al with a movie reference and a tip of the cap to you Hitchcock fans.
Don't do too many of those, you know, except for basketball.
Which was a better movie, The Birds or Basketball? The Zucker brothers or Hitchcock? I don't know.
No favorite nations clause in that one. And the 3-2 pitch got him swinging, blew it by him. Ramon Ramirez reaching back to take care of Bay. And now Evans comes up for the second time. He pinch hit for Lucas Duda in the 8th inning and grounded out. Evans just called up.
And forgot to pack a sweatshirt, not mindful that he was headed for San Francisco.
Right. 0-1 the count. Rays and Yankees tomorrow on MLB. And if you don't know, the game in New York was rained out tonight, putting that quest by Derek Jeter on hold. Wants to know where that one missed. 1-1 the count.
Many fine restaurants in San Francisco. Wherever Eli Whiteside goes after the game, he won't be going with David Rackley, the plate umpire. They have had their differences.
They may wind up at in and out, which is probably Whiteside's assessment of Rackley's play or pitch calling tonight. Bochy too.
Well, he tried to frame it, tried to sell it. No sale, says Rackley.
And that's fouled away. And that time Beltran started to take off from second and stopped. And Murphy kept on going from first.
Might have been interesting.
Very.
Had he swung and missed instead of fouling it off.
Hey, look at that. Would have been very interesting. Would have ended the inning too.
Could have been reminiscent of the '62 Mets.
Right. The Amazons. The original Mets. And that is hit into center field for a base hit. Beltran's going to be waved in, and then the ball is dropped by Torres, who had created a situation where Pagan had reached on a two-base error. So a forgetful top of the ninth inning for Andres, and the Mets get another run and now lead it by a score of 5-2. And for Bruce Bochy, one of those nights where you make a move, you think it's a good one, and everything backfires on you. That might have been close. Now the catcher, Josh Tolle, with runners at first and second, takes up high for a ball, and the count 1-0. Tolle is the 8th man to come up in the inning. It started with Hairston pinch hitting and hitting a home run to give New York the lead, and that's grounded down to short, and Crawford goes the short way, but not before the Mets take the lead with 3 runs on 3 hits. 1 giant error, 2 left, middle of the ninth inning, 5-2 Mets.
To left field and deep and down he goes back and it's gone. Unbelievable. You're looking at one for the ages here.
I think you just go back to your childhood. That little kid in the backyard that says, 3-2 count, the pitch is coming, you get to hit the home run to win the World Series. And I went back to that youth in my backyard, and I ran around the bases, got to home plate, and that's when it really hit me that we're going to win this thing and go to the World Series.
And indeed they did. They went to the World Series, and then in the World Series, on the verge of winning it, you had the memorable Bill Buckner play. The Mets win in Game 6, and then they went on to win it in Game 7. And every time I look at that game, Bob, I keep thinking about the one thing people forget. Henderson gave them the lead in the top of the ninth inning, but the Angels came back and tied the game in the bottom of the ninth, had the bases loaded, 1 out, and Bobby Grich and Doug DeCinces coming up couldn't get the run in. It goes to 11. Henderson hits a sac fly as Rodriguez comes in to try to finish off the Giants, and Boston wins the game and then goes back to Fenway and wins games 6 and 7. Tejada to lead off, then Whiteside, and then a pinch hitter. So they bring in K-Rod with a 3-run lead. And that's grounded to the left side, and collecting it and throwing, and it's Evans coming off the bag, and disputing it is Tejada, but the throw was in time, though it was up the line, and Tejada throws out Tejada. So 1 down, and that'll bring up Whiteside. Earlier you had Duda on a similar play, dropping the ball, and this time Evans, who replaced him, makes the play that Duda couldn't earlier.
I don't know what Miguel's gripe is, other than perhaps contending that Evans missed him, but that doesn't appear to be the case.
Now Whiteside. It's funny, you look at Rodriguez, 3-run lead. Why would he necessarily be in the game? And he's got that game's finished clause.
And it is technically a save situation.
And that's popped up into foul territory. And Evans will run out of room. 1-1. I hate those clauses. I mean, I hate them in any sport. When you're thinking about some individual number, I mean, what do you do if you have 54 saves? It's the last day, or 54
finishes.
Game finishes, and it's the last day of the season. The score is 11-0. You let him finish the game for $17 million. I guess if you're his broker, you do. 1-1. And that's a check swing foul into the seats, and they count 1 ball and 2 strikes on a 91-mile-per-hour fastball.
So Rodriguez here with a chance to notch his 23rd save in 26 opportunities. In theory, the easiest possible save. The maximum number of runs you can lead by and still qualify is 3 when you come in to start an inning.
Major League record 62 saves for the Angels in the 08 season, and he left Anaheim and headed to Gotham. He takes care of Whiteside. So that's 2 down. The Giants are down to their last out. Well, it says here the stars align for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game as the best of the American League take on the National League's top players. Don't miss the action Tuesday, July 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Fox. This one counts, it says here.
Half of the broadcast team, one of your many former partners, Tim McCarver, working with our friend Joe Buck.
Yep.
Pat Burrell off the bench.
Burrell, longtime Philly. Starting left fielder last night, and he'll squib this one toward the middle, and Burrell on the run will get thrown out to end the game. So Tejada takes care of him. It's a 3-up, 3-down inning. Rodriguez picks up a very easy save, and the New York Mets come up with 3 runs in the top of the 9th inning after Brian Wilson had come into the game. The game-winning hit was the home run by the pinch hitter Hairston, and the Mets continue a very fine West Coast trip. They are now 4-1 in sunny California.
Well, Al, we didn't get the 19 innings you hoped for, but we did get an interesting game, and this was fun.
This was a lot of fun. In fact, I think we should come back tomorrow and just bring like a recorder or something.
Just work it for our own amusement.
Right.
Which at times I felt like we were doing tonight anyway.
Why not? Let's go back and watch basketball. What do we need here? We got a problem.
I'm going to
do this.
I'll read this. There are the particulars right there on the screen. Digest that for yourself. And coming up next, keep it here for Quick Pitch. News and highlights from a busy day in baseball, all in one lightning fast hour. So, for the great Al Michaels, Bob Costas, good night from San Francisco. Thanks for watching this MLB Network special presented by Chevrolet on MLB Network. Good night, everybody. Is there a more beautiful vista in all of baseball? Wow, what a sight.
Poetry, I like that.
See, Al, it's just like riding a bike.
Yeah, it's just like riding a bike until I say it's 3rd down and 5. And that one is gone. Angel Pagan. And reaching for it. Can he get to first base in time? Yes!
Shearholtz drives one to deep right. If it's fair, this is a tie game. Splash!
And that one is gone to give the Mets the lead.
Well, that move really blew up in Bruce Bochy's face.